You're good to go.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, Thursday, March 24th, 2022, Committee of the Whole. I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq. Record of attendance, no absence with regrets. I believe everybody's here. 3, 4, 5. Yes, we are. Any declarations of conflict of interest, you can say so at the time. Approval of agenda. Any additions or deletions? Councillor Cleveland?
Additions?
Can't hear you.
Sorry.
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Tourism Week is one of my additions.
Okay.
Parking on Chestnut Street.
Any others? Hearing none. Go ahead.
Did you say a second one, Wade?
I did. Parking on Chestnut Street.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay. Hearing no other additions, can I have a motion for approval of the agenda? Mayor Mood, seconded by Councillor Bell. All in favor, do so by raising your hand. Those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we have a presentation today, deer hunt presentation by Mike Dolter from Truro, I believe. Thank you for joining us today. And The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. So again, I'm going to, this is a mission here after all this time. I don't think I've ever shared a screen in Teams before, so I'm going to figure out how to do that.
Should be a share button up by the leave button.
I see it. Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And as long as I share the right one, we should be good here. That would be. So can you see my presentation there now?
No.
No. Okay. Let me just see now. Okay. How about now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yeah,
yes.
Good to go. Okay. Yeah. So I will go into the presentation mode there. Yeah, so thanks very much for the opportunity to address you. Obviously, this is I won't say an exciting thing for us, but certainly deer management, the management program has been something we have been dealing with for a long time. I think I've been with the town since 2014, and I believe it was brought up in my hiring interview. They talked about the deer problem. So it has taken a while to evolve. So I'm gonna take you through the process that we've gone with as far as how we've got to where we are and having done our first hunt. And so the agenda I've got just a little in way of introduction, kind of overview of the problem that we had. I mean, we can compare them to what Yarmouth is going through. Talk about our 2017 public engagement process that we had and the surveys that we did. The 2020 plebiscite that we did in conjunction with the municipal election. Touch a little bit on some of the study work that's been completed, certainly through what we've been doing and in some of the other looks that we've done around the country. The deer management strategy itself, I'll go into that just to let you know what we've done in order to get our plan together. The committee that we put together, review the management options. I'll quickly go through those because there's quite a few things and the pros and cons. I won't read those, but I'll just touch on each of those. Talk about council approval and the recommendations and what they considered in bringing the plan forward and approving the plan. And then maybe the, no pun intended, the meat of the presentation is talk about the hunt planning and implementation, exactly what we did. And, and it's, and again, there's quite a few things that we learned going through and we'll still be learning as we go through the next process. So, so if we go back for our overall management strategy, way back in June of 2017, we hosted a information session at our town hall and brought in people from the town and in fact surrounding area to talk about deer management, and we surveyed them at the time as well too. And we wanted to set up a session that wasn't necessarily people screaming at us from microphones. So we really set it up as an information session. And what we did is we had some groups that obviously had some interest in this: Department of Lands and Forestry now, Department of Natural Resources and Renewables, Nova Scotia Health, because we had a lot of people expressing concerns about public health and ticks and the types of things, and Lyme disease. We had one of our local nurseries there, Hillendale Perennials, and talk about, good ways of gardening to avoid attracting deer. And then we had our bylaw enforcement people there from the town as well, and to talk about the no feeding bylaw, as well as to administer a public survey and get people involved. So, so we carried out a survey using online as well as paper submissions that people could do, and we kept that open for around 10 days or so to allow people a chance to give us their opinions on a bunch of various topics. I'm not going to go through all the details, but I will highlight a few of those things that did come forward that we felt were significant. So overall, we got over 1,700 responses to the survey, which is certainly significant. And 65% of the respondents indicated that they either lived or owned property in town. So, there was a significant number of people from out of town, but obviously they felt involved in the issue enough to actually fill out the survey. So, part of what motivated us to get this started is people were talking a lot about vehicle deer collisions. So we did a little preliminary work in conjunction with some of the other studies we're doing, and we had the Truro Police actually do search on the database, not necessarily a completely scientific process, but we went through and said, okay, anytime the word deer or deer collision was cited in a police report, it would highlight that. So what we found out from 2018 to 2020, we had an average of about between 19 to 21 collisions on an annual basis with deer. Now, subsequent, and part of what we learned from the current, the hunt we just conducted, of the 14 deer we took, 4 of them had been hit by vehicles. So we know that the data we have of the 20 deer is probably way underreported. So basically, most people, they collide with a deer. If there's no serious damage to their cars, they may not report it. So we know that this is a much bigger issue than we first thought. But one of the critical things, and we have access to Esri software, and so you'll see from this map that and we're doing this a little bit more now. We're starting to map out some of the areas, and you'll see some more maps that we've done in order to get a good sense of where the deer are concentrated, and therefore where we have to kind of direct our efforts. So from the 2017 public engagement process, we asked a few questions, and one of the ones that an obvious question, I guess, is that we wanted to know whether or not people felt that the deer population was a problem in town. And obviously, we had a majority of people, over 55%, that said it was either very serious or somewhat serious. And of that group, we asked them also to, basically to rank things. And, it's really less than 45% of the population said it wasn't a problem. So these are people that either like to see the deer or just hadn't had any real conflict with them. In addition to that, we asked that whether, how much of a priority should we be placing on this? And again, we've got over 50% of the population said that, yeah, it had to be, they strongly agreed that, a portion of the budget had to be allocated in order to deal with the issue. Now, interestingly enough, back in 2017, we did ask the question about a controlled hunt. What do you think of this? And you can see from the data here, we only had about 36% of the population at that point that either strongly supported or supported a hunt. The uncertain ones may have been on the fence, but we don't know either way. So basically, in 2017, we didn't necessarily have overwhelming support to go forward with a hunt, even though we made efforts to explain how that might look at the time, right? Now, when we compare this to what we did as far as the plebiscite goes, so we felt it was really important to ask a very clear and obvious questions in going to the plebiscite. So, this is kind of a yes or no answer, but when we had the municipal election on October 17th, very clear question was, do you support a managed urban crossbow hunt? Because we didn't know which way it was going to be at the time in the town to control or reduce the urban deer population. As you can see here, over 56% agreed yes, they felt lethal measures should be taken in order to control the population. So you see almost a 20% shift in over a 3-year period. So obviously, what was considered to be, not so significant issue in 2017, people are getting to the point now where they want something done about it. So when you look at this right now, we had over 4,123 people that cast a ballot, and which represented 39.5% of the population. We did have some people that were against the hunt said, well, you didn't have half the population vote in the plebiscite, therefore, can't consider it valid. But we had to remind them that council got voted on that same 39.5 percentage, so, and that was valid. So, what was fair for council was fair for the plebiscite. So we use that argument anyway. So, and that's where we went. So, so studies completed. Right. One of the critical things working with the province, with DNRR, and trying to get their support for as much as we could, they required us to have data and information to basically help inform both them and us how significant the problem was. So what the data we collected, and we were talking about a little bit earlier before we started the presentation, we talked about we had to do pellet count inventories and also roadside route counts and surveys. So, which is just what it sounds like, is driving around and observing deer and writing down when you saw a deer. And these are all on specified routes, done twice a year on the same routes over multiple years. So again, I'll show you where the data was on that. So again, the roadside counts that started in the fall of 2018, spring and fall. And then in the spring since 2018, we've also been doing the pellet counts. And we've used 2 retired biologists from Department of Natural Resources, and they've been doing the pellet counts. And obviously, because there is there's a consistent technique that has to be used in order for the data to be valid. So just for, again, we're talking about the Esri software and doing the mapping. This is the spring and fall roadside surveys that we've been doing. And again, each of those represent, in the spring of 19, spring of 20, and you can see each of those points, data points, represent different numbers of deer that are seen. Again, we're not talking huge amounts in some cases, but again, in almost every situation, you're seeing some number of deer. Although I don't understand how you see 0.4 of a deer, but again, it is data, so it is average. So we'll go from there. Again, then spring and fall roadside surveys again, and this is showing the max daily counts for each season. And so you look at some of those daily counts. Some of the numbers are starting to get up. You look in the one area here. I'll go to this screen. You look at, in the spring of 20. 12 deer were sighted on one drive-by, sector 4 over 8. So you can start to see where the concentrations are in this area here. 6 there in the spring. There's over 10 deer sighted on that one drive-through. Was there a question there? And I'm open to questions as I go. I should have stated that when I started. So then, probably the more significant of the data we found was the pellet group surveys. And again, this is 18, 19, 20 data. Unfortunately, I don't have the 21 data on this particular slide, but I do have that data actually a slide that demonstrates where the overall increase have been on a future slide. But again, this shows you some of the some of the trends that we were seeing. I kind of pointed to this is Transect 5. And we saw over a 3-year period, we went from groupings of 28 groupings, 35, and then in 2020 we saw 92 groupings of deer pellets. So again, that's a significant increase, and you can see some other areas where those numbers jump significantly. Some of them went down slightly, but for the most part, the levels were maintained. And again, one of the challenges with pellet groupings is you've got to do them earlier enough in the year where you don't have a lot of vegetation growing up, because it tends to cover the piles and it makes it difficult. So again, timing of the pellet studies is fairly critical. We used this data to kind of decide where our hunting areas would be. So one of the things that council decided early on, there would be no hunting in Victoria Park. So these areas here, we did, although there were a lot of deer there, we did agree that that's not an area that we wanted to hunt. So mainly where we did, in general terms, we hunted in this area along here, in the area here where the 95 grouping was, and then along Marshland Drive where we have a lot of deer coming across Marshland Drive and into the downtown area. So those are all areas that we selected once the hunt was actually approved.
Hi.
Yep, go ahead.
Who did you say you had used to do the pellet counts?
We had 2 retired biologists. They actually have a company name which I don't have with me, but I can forward that to you to see if they'd be interested. The counts themselves cost us about, just for a dollar figure, about $5,000 a year for the actual pellet count. And I can give you an idea of our budget later on too, which isn't in the presentation, but I do have that information down, what we budgeted annually for it as well.
Were they local? These biologists?
They were 2 locals. They were actually their information was passed on to us by DNRR, and so we contacted them, and we've got them on an annual contract now to do the study. So they'll be starting now as soon as once the frost is out of the ground and we're ready to go again. Yeah,
thank you.
And they've been excellent. They do a full report and provide the necessary mapping as well too. So we're going to talk a little bit about
before we move on.
Yep.
How did you decide where to do the pellet counts?
Basically, we looked in forested areas, and we kind of went by their expert opinion. They looked at areas where they thought there was likely to be a concentration of deer. We pointed them towards areas that we knew based on resident complaints and that we knew deer were. So we kind of used that to confirm. And once we established those areas, I'm trying to think if I don't think we didn't find any areas where we didn't find deer, but it did confirm the concentrations that we expected. The one thing about pellet counts too, in case anybody's wondering, it doesn't tell you what your population is. It just tells you in particular areas whether or not you have a concentration of deer. So, the actual population counts are very difficult to do. You got to do overflights. There's all kinds of very complicated means to actually do it. And if you know anything about Truro, we've got a pretty heavy tree canopy, and it's really difficult to get an accurate count on the numbers of populations. And at the end of the day, it really doesn't tell you anything other than the fact that you get an idea of total numbers. But based on the pellet counts, we do have an accurate count of deer per square kilometer, which is kind of what we wanted to have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So obviously from there we wanted to move forward with a deer management a strategy itself too. But before we went there, we put together the committee to kind of put this thing together for us. So the DMS itself basically was provides us a clear and coordinated approach to the control measures we had to take in place. We didn't want to just go to a hunt and assume that was the only thing that we had to do. One of the critical things, and I think what I believe led to our success, is that we included everybody that we thought had an interest in the whole deer management in general. So obviously that was town council, town staff, Department of Natural Resources and Renewables were critical and a great help to us. They wouldn't give us any direct financial contributions, but they did give us a lot of in-kind support. They provided signage, expert advice, and they certainly took us through the permitting process as well too, and that was invaluable to us. Millbrook First Nation was involved directly, and in fact, we'll talk a little bit about some of the benefit that they got from that. One of the things that we didn't do well with them is we didn't involve them soon enough. And when we picked our sites, we had one site that was fairly close to them that was a site we wanted to use, but we talked to them too late in the process, so we actually couldn't use it for the hunt. So although we identified 4 sites, we only had 3 that were available. Now that's something when we move forward where we'll be involving them a little bit sooner. We also dealt with the Nova Scotia Federation of Anglers and Hunters, as well as a group that's in Brookfield, women that hunt. And we also had community members, because we realized we wanted a little bit of objectivity too. We actually recruited a community member that was not in favor of a deer hunt. So we wanted their opinion too, so that we were being fair. So one of the things that, obviously up front for the DMS, you really have to recognize that the deer population pose a risk to, the ecosystem, biodiversity, certainly landscaping, public health and safety, because of both ticks and deer collision, and just overall deer and human conflict. And, we have a lot of deer in town that are resident in people's yards. And that's one of the major issues, which is going to be difficult to overcome. So obviously, we wanted to make sure that, we were protecting the community at large as we move forward. And we really had to determine how best to do that. And we had to ensure that to implement widespread management, that we had the tools in place to actually reduce population numbers. Some of the methods that we're going to talk about, they control the numbers, they don't reduce them, and that's one of the critical decisions council had to make: is did we want to reduce or control? And that's one of the factors that they had to consider. One of the things too that and we got accused of, you're going to eliminate the deer out of town. The deer hunt is not designed to eliminate the urban deer population. It's to bring it to a level that is within the social carrying capacity of the town residents, and that's I think something all councils can associate with. That's the level where people stop complaining. So that's the social carrying capacity when people are stop complaining about the deer. So obviously we looked at several management options to reduce and control the population. I'll just quickly run through those. If you've viewed the presentation, you've seen some of those. So overall, once we had everything done, the council actually did approve the draft deer management strategy was approved in September 2021, and that's when a lot of the real work started. But again, I just want to kind of go through the options because again, one of the critical things we felt had to be done was we had to look at everything, not just assuming a deer hunt was the only thing that was involved. And one of the things we did learn, and I think we already knew, was that a deer hunt is one of the things you do in conjunction with all the other things that have to take place at the same time. And one of the things that we through our public education, we want to ensure that the residents know that they have a role to play in making this whole situation work. So when you look at the management options, they're really in 3 areas. It's conflict reduction, population reduction, and then the public education, outreach, and enforcement. So conflict reduction, landscape and gardening, basically, a big effort has to go into encouraging gardeners to incorporate less palatable plants so the deer are not there to eat their landscaping and the plans for their yards. So obviously there's a big advantage to getting this done effectively because it's low cost, it's non-lethal technique. The problems that we do have is that deer, particularly when they're hungry, will eat anything. So even though, if you have a situation where you have a very bad a season where they can't get other things, they'll eat other things. And the other thing with the plantings is in most cases they have to be done in conjunction with repellents, and repellents have to be applied on a regular basis. So we have a lot of people that have done this. We actually did a demonstration garden in Victoria Park, and for the most part, it was fairly successful. We put out hostas and all that, and big surprise, the deer ate the hostas. But there was another group of plants that they didn't touch at all. So now we're using that to recommend to some of the local gardeners what they should be planting. Fencing is probably one of the best preventative measures, non-lethal measures that can be used. It's difficult around major or larger areas, and but it does work in some of the smaller areas. And fencing and repellents and gardening, people find this acceptable. The one con against this is that, it is expensive to put a decent fence in, and they have to be high, and they have to comply with some of the bylaws, and in some cases they aren't always practical. But we've found a lot of our residents have put fences up. We don't allow cattle fencing, although we know that some of our residents are using cattle fences as well too. So, just stringing wire tied into a 12-volt battery. They're somewhat effective, and I don't need to tell you guys, deer can jump. So you really do need to have a higher fence, or you have to have it set up properly. And there's a lot of recommendations on how that needs to be done. Repellents, again, repellents do tend to work. They are, and the primarily odor-based ones that they do work, and deer will tend to stay away from the plants. And then people use, everybody's heard about, I think, about the Irish Spring is apparently and that in fact it has been shown to work. The problem is it can be expensive, has to be reapplied. It's never going to totally eliminate the damage either. And when they're hungry enough, they're going to go through the repellents as well too. And that's one of the other things. Deer deterrence. We've got a lot of residents that are actively create unwelcome environments. They have motion activated sprinklers, they have noise activated devices that tend to work. In most cases, they're simple, they're cost effective. However, in a lot of cases, particularly with some of the noise related deterrents, they tend to bug neighbors, and in a lot of cases, unless it's done really early, the deer just adjust to them. I mean, anybody that's tried to shoo a deer away from the front of the yard know that after a while they don't leave. So it doesn't necessarily prove to be a long-term solution, but some people are still trying to use this as a method. So population reduction, so we have a controlled and managed hunt. So the controlled managed hunt, excuse me, is basically we're using legal deer hunting methods, closely regulated by provincial government, in this case the Department of Natural Resources, and involve the issuance of special licenses to hunters or hunting by authorized municipal staff. Very early on, it was suggested that Truro Police could hunt deer, and our chief and I supported him completely in it. Said no, we're not going to do that, and so that was understandable. At the end of the day, a controlled hunt is fairly cost effective to do. Obviously, maybe a little bit expensive to initially set up, and I'll talk about some of the costs. But particularly using archery, it's discreet, silent, and it's also a very short range weapon, so there's minimal danger to the public, particularly when the sights are set up properly. And the other thing too, once deer know that you're hunting them, they tend to move out of the area. So again, if it's done in the proper locations, it can tend to cause the deer to stay out of those areas after some time, which also means that you have to have multiple sites. And the advantage as well too is that you can positively impact local food banks, or in our case, Feed Nova Scotia, with the meat that comes out of it. Disadvantage, obviously, to be effective, you have to be prepared to take both does and fawns, which can be negative to some of the public. As a lot of people don't like the thought of that. But again, legal hunting is very acceptable throughout Canada, and that's kind of what we took as one of the things, that one of our messages that we kept going out there. Unfortunately, bow hunting is not effective as hunting with rifles. But again, we didn't see that necessarily as a disadvantage, because again, a properly structured hunt, you can take quite a few deer. Excuse me. Professional sharpshooters, I must admit, we did do our research off American sites. This is something that's very common in the States. They hunt at night with night vision devices and silenced rifles, and they go into neighborhoods and they shoot deer. Again, depending on the jurisdiction, it'd be acceptable. We have a bylaw that prohibits long guns to be used in town. So again, we weren't going here, but it is an opportunity, and we did talk. And the reason we kept this as a consideration, that in the right area, on the right site, it might have been an option for us to go to, but we chose not to do this. but it is very effective. It's longer range, and depending on who's doing it, it can work. But again, it doesn't contaminate the meat, so it can still be donated. The cons against this, it's expensive. You need really professional hunters to do it, and obviously there's noise. And to be very honest, with the events in Colchester County of 2020, we weren't doing anything in town that had guns going off. Again, we were staying away from that. We have people concerned even with the use of our police range since the April 2020 events, and are nervous about gunfire being heard. So again, that was something we weren't going there in any way, shape, or form. Supplemental feeding. This is considered an effective technique, and basically this is you put feeding out to keep the deer from coming in because they're well fed and they don't find any need to come into town or into the urban area. DNRR doesn't like this option because, again, really what you're doing is you're feeding malnourished deer, and in fact, you're keeping the population healthy. And one of the key aspects of our program is that we want nature to take its course. So if you have a cold winter, when they can't actually forage for food, we want the deer that can't to expire and not to survive into the summer. And also, we also end up creating areas where a lot of animals congregate, diseases can be shared, and then you get predators coming in. And again, we already have a concern about coyotes. So so this is something that it is an option, and it's used in other areas, but we thought the cons far outweighed the pros for this one as well. Public education, outreach, and enforcement is kind of a no-brainer, and it's something that we will always be doing. So we saw this an option, and we had to list it because it is a critical issue in public education, and getting the public to realize that the municipality is not going to solve this for them. DNR is not going to solve this for them. Our issue is mainly due to supplemental feeding by residents. We have, we issued a ticket back in, I think, 2018 or 2019 to a woman. When the bylaw enforcement officer showed up in her backyard, there was 25 deer in her backyard. So just imagine being her neighbor. And she was feeding them, and she said it kept her calm, but I don't think it calmed her neighbors too much. So again, that's one of the issues that we're dealing with, and they're definitely drawing people into drawing deer into the urban area. So obviously, the big advantage of this, it's overarching. It provides good information for people to understand exactly what you're doing, explains the management options to them. It can shift public perspective and expectations about the conflict, and basically, we want to get the message out in a nice kind of way. Is if you keep feeding the deer, we'll have to keep hunting the deer. And again, we need to get that message out in a good PR perspective, which PR is not my strength. I'll say that right now. And also, it's quick to implement, it's low cost, and gets a high level of support. But with the one con about it, obviously, getting the public engaged, getting them to change their habits, it takes a long time, and it's not a standalone option. So it has to be combined with other things. So we've designed a pamphlet that's gone out to all our residents with our water bills, and it talks about the hunt, talks about the things that they shouldn't be doing as far as feeding goes. And that got a fairly good response, and we'll continue to do that and provide public education. So some of the things that we did throw out and didn't consider, trap and euthanasia. This is something that a lot of people said, that they thought that this was a better option, where basically you put a trap out, or even netting is one of the other things, and you do more close quarters killing of the deer. It tends to be very inefficient because, again, you have to monitor one trap. You get one deer. You need trained personnel. You need multiple, 3 or 4 people to go in to take the animal out, and at that point, in most cases, the animals are in shock. So again, hunting, as much as some people don't like it, isn't about stressing animals out or putting them into shock. It's about, having a quick kill and taking the animal as humanely as possible. So trap and euthanasia was not considered an option. Trap and translocate. This is the one that everybody loves to talk about. You trap the deer and you move them somewhere else. Our question was, where do we move them, and who is going to take 30 or 40 deer? The other issue is that what tends to happen here is if there's ticks, if there's disease, you're moving disease to other areas of the province, as well as the deer do not deal well with being relocated. They like to be in a particular area and deal in that particular area they know. In a lot of cases, there are very poor outcomes for deer that are relocated, and that's supported by the wildlife biologists that we dealt with for DNR. Surgical sterilization, very effective method, only works when you have a closed area where you can control deer getting in and getting out. Cornell University used this for an example on their campus because they could control it. Very expensive. It's not very practical. I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $4,000 or $5,000 a deer in order to do this method. Fertility control is something that we didn't consider at this point. There's a study right now that I would encourage you to check out. It's in University of Victoria is doing a study right now on 2 communities in BC, and what they're doing is they're essentially trapping deer, netting them, and then using a injectable contraceptive drug on them right now, and they're going to be looking at the results. We actually looked at a product that was a dart-borne contraceptive that's being used in the U.S. It has to be applied twice a year. Costs about $35 an application. The thing is, the dart-borne contraceptive is not approved in Canada at this point. The BC one is only authorized because it's a study. So we're going to continue to look at this. This is a great method once you get down to a population level that you determine to be acceptable. And that's kind of where we might go once we get down to a level that we find is good for the community. So for the council approval and the recommendations, the council had to decide basically, on approving the DMS and the recommendation for hunt, really they had to address these issues, right? Does the town have an urban deer problem? If yes, obviously what should we do? If no, continue with the existing education on urban deer. So obviously in our case, based on the data we'd collected, council knew we did have a problem, and that was supported by what we had to show them. So, once they decided yes, what was the goal of the urban deer management plan? And again, we've talked about the social carrying cost. We're talking right now, you'll see the data, we've got about 6 deer per square kilometer. We're talking about when our pellet counts get us down to about 3 deer per square kilometer, that might be more acceptable level. Obviously, reduction in collisions is something else we're aiming for. So what's the process to meet our goals? So again, we're looking at population reduction. So based on peer review literature we looked at on deer management, the most feasible, effective, and cost-effective measure for population reduction was a control hunt. And again, that's what made sense. And in discussion with DNRR, that's where we headed. So along with the managed deer hunt, controlling the substitutional feeding is one of the things that is critical as well too. And so just, in addition to the pamphlets, if you're in Truro, you'll see these signs around. They were made to get people's attention. So they are addressed to the deer. We know, and we do know deer can't read. We did have a resident wondering why we put signs out for the deer, but we basically wanted to catch people's attention. So we have the do not feed the deer brochures that have been put out to everybody. We have signage all around town. We are going to change the signage too, because we realized that we had the words "do not" and then "feed the deer," and you could not see the deer. The "do not" did not stand out as well as we thought it would. So it looks like the signs say "feed the deer." So we are going to. So make sure that you look at your signage from a distance before you actually put it out. So there's a lesson learned for you. So we are going to change some of those signs. So we are doing education as well on social media, our website, and we're educating people on the wildlife feeding bylaw as well. And we're going to continue to record through our roadside surveys the sex and frequency of deer sightings. And we're asking residents as well to identify that as things go. So now getting into the actual, talking about this year's hunt. So when we looked at density, so this shows you the 4-year data that we've had, and these are the different. Remember the slide that we had with the transects for the pellet counts all around town. Again, I'm not going to relate those back to that map because again, unless you know Truro, that they don't mean a lot to you. But you can see the trends in some of the areas here. 2020 obviously we had a huge spike. A 3-year trend was increasing. A little bit down in some areas in 2020, but if you remember that one site that all of a sudden we went from 68 to 92 pellet count there. Again, we're looking there in that particular case. There's over 18 deer per square kilometer in that particular area. So, we know obviously we have an issue. And then again, from the average deer density in Truro between 2018 to 2021, again, you can see the upward trend here. And again, smaller increase from 20 to 21, but still it is upward trending. So again, that's a concern. And then the other slide here, or the other graphic, indicates how, based on the provincial average, Colchester, which includes us, is well up there, and predominantly, I think the deer population within the Colchester area is only about 2 to 3 deer per square kilometers compared to the town at over 6. So we have almost double the population within the urban area. So what did the managed hunt look like? I mean, obviously from the slide you can see one of the key pieces that I would recommend if you're going to do this, get a consultant. I mean, I'm an ex-military guy, but I don't hunt, nor do any of my staff hunt. And I had a revelation one night after council approved to go forward with the hunt, thinking, how are we going to do this? So we talked to DNRR and said, can you recommend somebody that can put this together for us? And we got an excellent individual that had his own nuisance wildlife company, and he's actually was involved in some of the work with the coyote culls. And he came in and really helped us put together the program and did an excellent job. So our first managed hunt, obviously, as we said, was a controlled bow hunt. What we did is we got a very small group of hunters that we selected. We didn't ask for applications. In fact, our consultant basically identified the people that he thought could do the job. And they worked under the strict guidelines of DNRR. So DNRR worked with us as soon as we identified the hunters and basically set the parameters, and we worked with that. We bought all the equipment for the hunt. So we are the proud owner of 4 crossbows right now, which we're storing with the police in the off season. And so they'll be used for future hunts. We hired the consultant, and he put the program together. We initially, because we were very late, we approved in September, but it took us some time to get the actual site approvals done. So we selected 4 sites, and each of those sites had to be individually inspected by DNRR to make sure that they were safe and they met the requirements. But the pellet counts were critical in identifying these sites. So we picked sites that we knew there were deer there. And one of the big concerns was they had to be wooded areas, and they had to meet all the safety requirements of the Hunting Act. And in fact, DNR allowed us to go inside the minimum distances that are established in the Hunting Act, because each of the sites were approved individually. And each of our permits actually were for the specific sites. We didn't get a general permit. We got a permit per site. And that was an important piece that they felt was important. That way, if any one site turned out to be inadequate or there was things we didn't consider, they only had to pull one permit, and the other permits were still valid. So that was a good step to have taken. And again, as I said before, nothing taken inside Victoria Park, because again, we wanted the public still to feel that they were safe within the park. Not that anybody was unsafe anywhere outside the park, but again, it's just public perception. And and each of the individual hunters, although they were all very skilled, they had to show those skills through to DNRR, and we had a 1-day training course, and we provided guidelines on what we wanted them to do, particularly even from the public relations perspective. And it was quite clear we didn't stop the hunters from talking to anybody, but we prefer that we did all the media work, and that worked really well. And they were happy to do that. They didn't want to talk to anybody when it came right down to it. They did get reported for poaching over one day. So we had one site, and one of the members of the public saw the vehicles there and saw the people going in and called DNR about them being poachers, and because DNR knew where the sites were, they knew who they were. So that was a good step to have taken. And again, we had special permits. Our permits were actually custom made for us. And now that they're in place, I think DNR learned a lot from the experience. And again, we established a limit for this year of 20 animals. And again, that's with the limited time frame we had to work within. One of the concerns is that by mid-February, a lot of the does are pregnant. And again, we were trying to avoid taking any pregnant does. Recommendation: never set a hunt up in the winter. We had during the 4 weeks we did the hunt, we had 4 storms, and God love these guys. We paid the consultant, but the other 3 hunters were volunteers, and they put up with some pretty inclement weather, I'll tell you. But they were happy to do it, and they wanted to contribute. So one of the sites, I said before, it came off the table because of Millbrook's late involvement. We were going to correct that. And then we had one site, because of the ice storm that we had and the winds that we had, the deer left the area because it was fairly open, and they didn't return. So we only effectively could use 2 of the sites. Also recommend putting trail cameras in place when you do start identifying sites, because then you get a real indication, other than the pellet study, of how many deer are actually moving through an area. Key piece of making this a positive thing for the public was we established a relationship with Dal AC, and they so basically all of the entrails, all of the inners of the deer were taken to them in totes, and we had 2 researchers there that were very happy to be able to do this, and they've got an ongoing study that we'll be providing them with the specimens on an ongoing basis, and they were thrilled because it's very hard to get that type of data, and so we'll continue with that. They also they used to have a meat cutting program within Dal AC, and because of COVID, it was shut down. So we used their freezer space, because one of the issues, obviously, when you're taking animals is what are you going to do with it? The closest butcher was, Tatamagouche. We had one in Tatamagouche and one in New Glasgow, I believe. So obviously you can't be running up there with 1 deer at a time. So we stored them at Dal AC, and then we took them up to be a little bit more efficient on what we were doing. But that was an excellent relationship. And then Millbrook First Nation, we're providing them with the hides for handicraft. So there's very little wasted with the deer, and the heads actually went to DNRR, and they were doing some research work on that as well too. So that worked well. So again, as I said earlier, took a total of 14 deer. 4 of those had been struck by vehicles. So again, clear indication that a significant number of vehicle collisions are occurring with deer that aren't getting reported. And again, the 2 butchers were arranged through Feed Nova Scotia. Feed Nova Scotia was outstanding to work with. They were very happy to get the meat, and as indicated here, we provided 189 kilograms of meat, which is over 1,800 servings of protein. So during a time where meat prices were going through the roof, and in fact it was being difficult for Feed Nova Scotia actually to buy meat, they were very happy with this. So we were helping to be able to help them. The late approval limited the number of deer that we could take. We were looking for more, but again, with the weather and everything, limited what we could do. We've made it clear to the public, because everybody said, you guys are crazy, you're not gonna do anything effectively with 1 hunt. And we said, geez, we never thought of that. No, we said, basically, we know this is an ongoing program. It's going to occur annually, and we are planning now for a fall hunt. Once we get down to a certain level, we'll look at other methods as well. We're committed to prioritizing public safety as far as the deer management effort goes, and we did not have a single issue other than the guys getting reported for poaching as a result of the hunting activity. So we were pretty happy about that, and we thought, particularly hats off to our consultant. He was very conscious of that, and all the hunters, first of mind. The one thing that we did as well too, although we didn't identify the sites publicly, we did make sure that there was signage. So whenever we had an active site, there were signs around telling people that, you know, a nuisance hunt was underway and to please not come into the area. And again, we had signs around the full perimeter, and that worked really well. And DNR actually worked with us, and they provided the signs, so that worked out well. So if you want to, you know, and never judge how good your hunting is going by being on Facebook, because we got massacred on Facebook. Everybody from every part of the world, I'm sure, thought we were the worst people in the world, and people who had left Truro thought, you know, I'm never coming to Truro again. And we went, yeah. They're local residents. We did not get those complaints. You know, so council didn't hear. In fact, they heard the opposite from local residents. Thanks for finally doing something. Really appreciate the effort that's being put into making this work. But again, be prepared that you're going to get a lot of criticism from a lot of various groups that are out there for animal welfare. But one of the things we wanted to make clear throughout the process here is we were doing this as humanely as possible. The difficulty is, you know, a lot of people don't understand bow hunting. So it did make that a little bit more difficult. So, you know, where do we go from here? So ongoing review, reporting, and implementation. So obviously we're going to do all the things that we've been doing: education, recording the complaints, conducting pellet counts, conducting roadside counts. You know, this is an annual hunt. We'll be doing it for the foreseeable future. We're planning on taking 50 deer in the fall. We don't know if that's achievable, but based on the comments from our hunters, they say yes, it is. And we'll be looking at that, and we're going to continue our partnerships, obviously, with the LIC and Feed Nova Scotia, DNR, and particularly Millbrook First Nation. Again, it's been a positive experience. I'm sure not for the deer, but a positive experience for the town as far as that goes. I think the deer management plan was a critical document for us to just understand where we're going. And, you know, one of the things, again, as you move forward, looking at bringing in a consultant is critical as well, too. So, you know, I think that has stopped me sharing there, I think, has it not, Jeff?
We still see your screen right now.
You
right?
still see my screen right now. Okay, let me figure out how to stop sharing.
You're gone now.
Okay, I'm gone now. Okay, there we go. Okay, so again, I closed the presentation just so we can see everybody, but certainly open to any questions or any concerns that you may have. But you know,
Mike, first off, thank you very much for that presentation. It was very thorough, and I really appreciate it. My question is about who you hired, and not specific names, of course.
Okay.
But the process that you went through to pick your crossbow hunters. How did that work?
So the process for that, the name of the consultant we actually hired was provided by DNRR. So I contacted the individual. We had gotten a couple of people. I contacted one individual. We had a good discussion. One of the key pieces we wanted to make sure his mindset was kind of where ours was. And he had demonstrated his skill through some of the other programs he was involved with the province. From there, we asked him to identify the hunters because, again, as I said, none of my staff had any knowledge of who could hunt and who couldn't. And DNRR were very reluctant to take responsibility for identifying the hunters. So again, the consultant did that. We've had a number of people that have come forward and asked to be involved. We might use them depending on how things go in the fall, but we'll screen those through our consultant and let him make those decisions. They're still based on the 4 people we have involved, which includes a consultant. They were happy to go with 4 people. They don't think to take the 50 deer they'll need any more than 4, and in fact, you know, I think they're looking forward to having normal weather in order to conduct the hunt, and obviously they have a longer period of time to do that, so they can take some rest. I mean, they were at this for 4 weeks in winter, and it couldn't have been fun, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so Mike, your initial first step was essentially to pull together the stakeholders and talk about the issue, then have an information session with the public.
Yeah, So that to 2017, just to get the initial look at it, as far as going towards the hunt itself, it was putting the deer management strategy together. And that was the public consultation to really start getting together with getting a plan together. So again, and that's online if anybody wants to take a look at it. And it's fairly detailed. It's not an implementation plan, it's a study, and then the implementation plan came after that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Are we 5 years out?
I think what's really important, I think first step for you right now would talk to your local DNRR rep.
We've done that.
Then have him talk to Glenn Pike. Glenn worked with us. I think he's a director, and also so what I'll do is Mayor Mood, I'll send you Glenn's number, and I'll forward it to Jeff as well. Get a hold of Glenn. He walked us through the process. They dealt directly. We were amazed when the minister had to sign off on our sites. The minister actually approved each of our sites, but Glenn worked directly with the minister to make sure that happened. So he was a great asset, and he can talk to the local DNR people because they consider us a pilot project to make sure it was achievable to be done safely. And I'm sure that they can talk and talk to them. And even the local DNR office, in fact, was storing the heads and hides for us. So they got directly involved. We did a lot of the field dressing up around the DNR office. So they were intimately involved with what we were doing and were very supportive.
Thank you.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you for the presentation. Very comprehensive. A lot to think about. One of the questions that I have, first of all, how large is the town of Truro? How many square kilometers?
Oh, now yeah, okay. I was going to say I could give you population square kilometers. You know what? I can't say that offhand. I should know that. That's something I have to check. Have to check online. We're fairly large. We've got 100 kilometers of road in town. But we're very forested as well too. So one of the issues, the reason we have so many deer downtown is there's a lot of forested corridors right into the downtown core, and our downtown is also very close to an agricultural area where the deer live and come into town. So yeah.
So the question that arises for me is trying to get an idea of what were the site requirements. You mentioned site requirements, how you determined where you could direct the hunters. And can you give me an idea of what's involved in those requirements?
Those requirements, mainly the Nova Scotia, the Hunting Act will determine a lot of that. There's distances from buildings and schools, particularly schools, that have to be minimized. What we essentially did is we established firing lanes. So the advantage of, again, a bow hunt is a static hunt, right? You're not walking through the woods. You're in one location. So basically, they had their location. They established their arcs of fire. So unless a deer walked into that exact area, they wouldn't take a shot at it. And all of those arcs were approved by DNRR. So we knew exactly where they'd be shooting, and that's why we knew people would be safe.
Okay, good. And can I ask one more question? It has to do with communications. You mentioned that between the time the survey was done and the time the plebiscite was done, that there appears to have been a shift in perspective from the community in terms of support for some kind of a cull or some kind of a management strategy. And I'm wondering to what extent you think that shift was due to the communications effort that the town put into developing their plan.
Well, the shift really occurred before we had the plan, but basically we had been doing some education throughout. But I think mainly it was just as you saw from the graph there how the population was increasing. So the number of complaints council was hearing was increasing each year. So we knew the population levels were increasing, and until we actually did the pellet counts, we didn't know how much, how many deer we were dealing with in particular areas. So as far as Mayor Mood, the question on how long it will take, I think DNR will determine that. Hopefully, they don't hold you to like 3 years of data, but they might. I don't know, because again, it does require special licensing to make it work, and so they control that aspect of it, right? Unless you do it in conjunction with the regular deer hunt. Yeah.
Councillor Heather?
Thanks, Mike. That was extremely interesting. And it's a problem we've been debating at our council table for the almost 2 years that I've been there. So it's really nice to see that somebody has kind of come up with a solution and a plan. So we're thankful that you've kind of done some of that leg work, and hopefully we can follow and up on with it. One of my questions was the survey and then the plebiscite that you did. How important is that piece to be done in a town before you would implement this?
The survey, I think, is really important because what I'll do is I'll send a copy of the survey that we used to Jeff so he can see the questions that we actually asked, the full survey. But it's good to get a sense of what the public feels about the particular situation, because most of the information we had prior to the survey was more anecdotal, right? We had complaints, but then we got more specifics from the survey itself. The reason we did, obviously 36% at the time we did the initial survey, but council was still pushing for, because they were getting a lot of flack from the public to say, okay, we really do have to look at a hunt. And one of the things I guess I kind of talked to council was said, really, at this point, you don't have a mandate to conduct a hunt because, again, only 36% indicate in the survey they were in favor of it. So, kind of to some extent to protect council from undue criticism, we said, okay, let's really find out if we're talking about a hunt, would it be supported by the residents? And again, that was, I think the plebiscite in my mind was critical to making sure we had public support,
It was certainly newsworthy across the province. So everybody was following it because it is a problem, I think, everywhere. And to go along with that, have you had interest from other towns, municipalities with what you're doing? In fact, before we actually did the hunt, we were talking to New Glasgow as well about what we were doing. So they are interested as well. We haven't talked a lot since we completed the hunt, but there's people that were interested in the results. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it soon. And again, at a future AMA conference, we may do a kind of an overview on how things went as well too, because I think we did learn a lot, and I think we're in good position. Just something I didn't mention. So we've established an annual budget now for the hunt of about $27,000. So that will include our consultant, the fee for our consultant. We are going to be paying a stipend to our hunters. We didn't pay them this year, but I think we want them to keep coming back with the misery they went through. We're going to pay them $1,000 stipend, and then that's also covers maintenance of that. The pellet counts of about $5,000 a year, and our roadside surveys are conducted by 2 of our employees, so that doesn't come at a cost. So, like I said, we're budgeting about $27,000 a year now to do this on an ongoing basis, which, we'd argue we did write the Minister of Natural Resources and said, this is really your responsibility, and we got a nice pat on the hand and said, yeah, it might be, but we're not doing it. Yeah. So again, that drove us again towards, we knew if anything was going to be done, we had to take control ourselves. Thanks, Mike.
Jeff, is your hand up?
Yes, it is. So first of all, thanks again, Mike. You've been very generous as usual with your experience and your time. To those on council who hadn't met Mike before, Mike is one of my most respected colleagues and one of my most generous colleagues in terms of sharing his experiences as CAO in a town. So again, thanks, Mike. I say that a lot because you do share, as I said, a lot with your colleagues, and that's much appreciated.
Yeah.
I noted that you said the staff didn't cost you anything, so I'm going to be talking to you about how you get your staff to volunteer to do their work. But
there you go.
Yeah. Councillor Hatfield had asked about the size of the town, so I did a quick search on Wikipedia. So just for comparison, town of Truro is 37 square kilometers. Town of Yarmouth is 10.5 square kilometers. So we're much more compact than the town of Truro.
The one thing, Jeff, you got to take Victoria Park out of there because we wouldn't hunt Victoria Park, so that takes a lot of. The park is huge, so that takes a lot of hunting.
We're not going to hunt on Water Street, so we'll take that out of our side.
There you go. One of the things we are going to try to do, and DNR is supporting this. We're going to try to actually come a little bit tighter into the core area of the town, and we've got a couple sites that are well forested and in ravines that are actually in the urban area of town. So we've got one site in particular. We know there's a lot of deer there. So DNR learned that we can do this safely. So they may let us come a little bit more closer quarters on some of the sites, but we're only going to do that if it can be safe. So.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Mike. That was very informative. And as Councillor Heather said, we've been battling this for a while and glad to get some quality information and some legwork that's already been done. And best of luck to you guys up there. And hopefully it doesn't take us 5 years, but hopefully we get there as well. So thank you.
I hope so. And anything you need, just give me a call. We'll provide whatever information you require.
Very much appreciated. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Take care. Okay, on to 8A, staff reports. Up first is CAO's report. Any questions for our CAO? Report so good, there's no questions at all. Perfect. We'll move on. 8B, we have our fire department report, Mike DeVoe. Any questions for Mike? Mike's on the line. Go ahead, Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I just wanted to ensure that Mike passes along to Travis McFarlane our congratulations on joining the volunteers in the Yarmouth Fire Department. Welcome to Travis, and let's keep on finding volunteers in our community to help us serve. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass it along, and we've got a couple more on the pipe, and I spoke with another person a few days ago, so we're getting there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm not sure if I thank you, Mike, for coming down and filling up the rink for us. For those who don't know, Mike graciously came down with a staff member, and I believe it was 28,000 liters or gallons. And although the temperature didn't cooperate, we didn't get it this year. We're looking forward to it next year. And just thank you for that community support, and very much appreciate it.
No problem. We're here to help.
Awesome. Thank you very much. No other questions for Mike? Thank you, sir. 8C, Operational Services, Chad LeBlanc. Any questions for Chad? Councillor Dares, I see. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, just very quickly, Chad. I've had questions asked from one driver and two pedestrians about the intersection of Vancouver Street and the Overton Road. There is a street light on the, I believe it's on the municipality side of the street. I'm not sure where the county line or where the line is drawn there, but two drivers or two pedestrians and one driver has indicated that people coming from the hospital that are walking home, that the east side of the street is quite dark, and pedestrians have walked out in front of cars. There's a visibility issue there, and especially at night. So I just wondered if you could take a peek at it and see if you could recommend whether or not there should be an additional street light in that area.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sure.
Councillor Lesser?
Just out of curiosity, I'm wondering, I see on Water Street on the north end, I guess it might be more, but there's a whole bunch of markings in the road, and I'm just curious for my own sake, like all the paint and stuff on the road, are those spots that are just going to be fixed when those are like, it's an orange spray? Are those spots that are just like scheduled for paving or like potholes or something, or is there some type of like? I guess when I see those orange lines, I'm just trying to figure out what they might mean.
Frankly, I'm not familiar with the lines you're speaking about. If they're circles, generally our staff will circle off any potholes for repairs. If they're lines, that's nothing we've done. Maybe when Mark speaks here on his presentation, maybe he's had some work done in that area.
Okay, and the other part is like it's around, I think, where the old, I'm not sure which gas station had it, but there used to be some like some oil or gas tanks there, and it's an empty lot next to whatever the restaurant is in Dominion Textile, somewhere on that area. And it's just, there's a whole bunch of markings, and then going up the one-way street. I can't think of the name of that street.
Okay.
Just a lot of orange, and I didn't know what that was.
Yeah, I am familiar with that. That property's owned by SO, and they have a consultant. They've had a consultant in the area this week doing some installing some monitoring wells. So we did go ahead of time and mark services out in the street, water mains and sewer mains. So I apologize. That's what we did there.
Okay, no, not a problem. And once again, thank you for all the work you guys are doing. Everybody on here for staff. It's as Jeff said about finding volunteers on staff. I know you guys go above and beyond all the time, so we appreciate all of you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions for Chad? Thank you for the work you and your crew do, sir. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Planning and Economic Development Report. Natalie. Any questions for Natalie? Councillor Heather?
Hi, Natalie. I just got one question on the vacant building report. And of the 17 that were presently, I still identified as vacant, there was 3 that you had written that were not registered as vacant buildings. Does that just mean that the owners haven't filled out those forms and done the registration for a vacant building?
Correct.
Okay. So what's the process when they haven't done that and maybe continually, not do that? Do we have a process in place of what we do next?
So typically those 3 particular properties are vacant property owners. They're out of province.
Okay.
So in some cases we have tried to track them down and have not had a result. So what we do is we do a exterior review for dangerous. So we look, is the building secured? Is there anything that would lead to maybe the roof or anything else causing public safety issues? So we do that review. If we see anything that's either suspicious, we report to RCMP, obviously. But if we see anything that's of great concern, the building official does have the right to enter the building given enough notice. So at this point, we haven't seen any of that.
Good, thank you.
Any other questions for Natalie? Thank you for your thorough report. I enjoy the updates every week, and I really feel for those people who don't think that a lot's going on, go to the website, download the report, take a read. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes with staff, and I'm sure they're very busy keeping up on things. So thank you for that. Engineering report, Mr. Brophy. Any questions for Mark? Councillor Dares?
Yes, just one quickly. Mark, I note that you have notation next to the Harrington Avenue issue in regards to sidewalks. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on it a little bit so that I can report back to the citizens in that area.
Sure. We've gone with a drone survey there, and it's taken a little longer for those files to go to what our designer can use. The consultant contract has been awarded. He just requires the survey information. Supposed to have it in a week, and design will start. So it doesn't take long to design that. But If the capital plan gets approved, as I think this is actually a Chad project, we're just helping with the design. If it gets approved, this could certainly be a this year project.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Mark? Thank you, sir. Finance Department, Jerry. Any questions for Jerry? If not now, I'm sure we'll have a few in a bit when we do the capital budget. See what's up there. Okay, no questions for Jerry. We'll move on. Yarmouth Recreation Report. Any questions for Frank? I guess just one from me, Frank, about Sarah's position. Is that already posted?
We hope to get that out the door tomorrow.
Perfect. There's some interested candidates, so.
Yeah, so Sarah LeBlanc, our community recreation coordinator, has left us March 17th. She's moved on to the Valley. She's doing a similar job in West Hants, and we wish her all the best.
Perfect. Thank you. Any questions for Frank? If not, thank you very much, sir. Okay. 9A, Citizen Appointment Process Policy. Recommended motion is that council direct staff to draft amendments to the Citizen Appointment Policy according to the discussion of March 24th or further discussion on April 28th Committee of the Whole agenda. Councillor Lesser, any discussion on this one? CIO?
Yeah, so one of the things that we were talking about here in the office is that our citizens appointment policy probably needs some thought put into it. And we're aware that this council hasn't actually appointed a lot of citizens to committees since the last election. And there were some questions that we had or thought that might provoke conversation around citizen appointment. I don't know if you want to get into that today or if you've given some thought to some of the questions that were posed in the request for decision. I guess staff are looking for some guidance to improve the policy and to make it yours. And we didn't jump ahead and write a policy prior to a conversation. So we're inviting the conversation and the guidance.
Anyone like to speak to that at all? Councillor Lesser?
I think we've talked about it a few times around making sure that we have the best suited candidates in each of our committees. Somebody that has the skill set that we're looking for, because the committees that have people with those skill sets, I think, are the most productive ones. But also keeping in mind diversity and not just having one group of one population, like white males, for example, represent a group. So if there's a way to balance diversity along with people with the skill set, I think that would be good to include.
So we had asked, the council had asked its advisory committees and boards to consider a matrix, and some committees and boards did respond with matrices for what they felt were appropriate for their area, but we did not receive them from all, and I think there were some discussions at some that maybe they didn't understand what we were getting at, but. That certainly was the intent through the Council Lesser, is that things like the suited candidates, well, on a board, you might want a mix of skills, not just all one skill. And certainly from a background or ethnicity or whatnot, gender, as much diversity as possible in terms of the perspectives that are brought to bear at either a board or an advisory committee is what we were kind of shooting for with that effort.
Councillor Heather?
Hi, thanks, Jeff. On one of the lists that we were presented with, it just reads that the appointee must be a candidate, must be a resident or a taxpayer of the town of Yarmouth. And so I know we've made some changes for that when one of our communities in Bloom, and I know that was a motion put forward and passed by council, so I can't remember how that read, if it was just for the isolated, that committee, or if it was committee for all the committees, but just something to we should be thinking about in that and how that reads out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think if I may respond, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
And I'm going from memory, but I think at that time when we discussed that, it was specific to one committee.
I think so too.
And I think that's a conversation that I would like to hear among council as a general principle. Is residency or ownership of property a necessary criteria? And it may be that it's something on a matrix that, of course, some of your members need to check the box, but do all of your members have to check the box is the question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Mayor Moore?
Thank you. Yeah, I like to have that conversation as well, Jeff, around, do they have to be citizens of Yarmouth? I don't think they need to be. I think we need our best people. I think my bigger concern is the matrix that we've asked to have developed at each committee and board, and are they reflective of what we need? Like, how do we make that happen? So, you know what I mean? And I always go to the Mariner Center because it's so easy. But the fact that you skate or your children skate does not make you the best candidate for a Mariner Center board, which we know, and that doesn't happen. So I can certainly say that because it doesn't happen there. It's just really important, and Councillor Lesser said it. Those that are more diverse and that are drawing in, all those different people, but also those skill sets are tremendously important. I mean, if you have a committee that has finances at their fingertips, but there's nobody with any financial astuteness on that committee, I feel like we're lacking. I don't know how we fix that piece. Maybe that's a bigger conversation.
Well, again, if I may respond, just when and I was talking to somebody earlier today about the matrix. The matrix is intended to be an inventory of backgrounds and skills and everything, and it isn't that you want everyone to check every box, certainly not. But you want to look at and make sure that somebody on the board, if you've got the matrix done well, somebody on your board or your committee checks each box. And so then you've got the most diverse in terms of background and the important things that, let's take the PAC as an example. So do you have somebody who's, living in a residential area, owns a business, is involved in maybe industrial development or has knowledge in those areas that the committee is going to be making decisions about, or somebody who's particularly concerned about the softer things, the quality of life things, not just a hardcore group of developers, right? Or people interested in development. It has to be diverse in interests. And so, each committee really has to make its own matrix, because what you want for a PAC group and the boxes you want ticked would be very different than recreation, where you might want somebody who's been in, got a leadership background, somebody who's got an outdoor recreation background, somebody who's got a sport background, so and somebody who's youth, somebody who's a senior, right? Somebody who lives in a very rural area because that's a shared service. Somebody who lives, in town. Think of economic realities. Somebody who doesn't have a lot of means, and maybe somebody who does. there are so many boxes you can check on recreation that don't apply to PAC. So they need to be done separately at each committee. And if need be, if the committees are struggling with that, I don't mind going myself and participating in the discussion and trying to facilitate that creation of a matrix if it helps. But I think it's important that the people and the counselors and the citizens who are sitting on those committees today and have experience on those committees probably have the most, a very important perspective in terms of what kind of background coming to the table would make the committee stronger.
Not always.
No, not always, but I think we concede some discussion.
Okay.
Thought.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Dares, I believe, was next.
Thank you. I know I'm going to probably sound like I'm echoing a little bit, but two of the appointments that I'm aware of, one that I made the motion at the Communities in Bloom meeting, was for somebody that lived outside of the town of Yarmouth, but was probably, and I think Councillor Hatfield will back me up on this, was probably one of the most industrious volunteers for Communities in Bloom and for the town of Yarmouth. So it was an easy motion to make, and I was really pleased that she was eventually appointed. But I think she was appointed as a representative of the garden club rather than as just an interested person. And maybe that should be amended, that, we've got somebody who lives just outside town limits, not that far, that is extremely involved in all things to make this town a better place to live and to beautify it. So maybe I guess we have to remove that that condition that it's somebody that's representing the garden club. It's an individual that is extremely interested in what happens. And the other one was, of course, somebody that lives outside of town, works in town, has a business in town, that was extremely instrumental in advancing and moving the Mariner Center forward. And so in both cases, I think we have to, I guess, stretch the boundaries. Like the town limits are not big enough, honestly, to get the people that we need. I do support Jeff in the fact that the matrix system that we use has to be developed for each individual committee. What works for the Airport Commission is not going to work for the Mariner Center, is not going to work for Communities in Bloom. So each committee or board, I think, has to develop their own matrix system. And you're right, Jeff and Pam. Sorry to be so familiar, but you're right in the fact that you don't have to tick all the boxes. Diversity is what we need, and you can't get diversity if you have to be pigeonholed into every single box. So so I support that wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
I think I've thought a lot about whether or not I support individuals serving on advisory committees having to be from the town of Yarmouth or to have a property in the town of Yarmouth. And I've come down on the side that I think we need to be more expansive in our consideration of who can work with the community. I think we're going to meet with the municipality of Yarmouth in April to begin to talk about consolidation. I think there's a recognition that boundaries are kind of artificial, that we want people to think of the town as the hub of our region so that everyone has our best interests at heart, because it's also in their best interests for the town to succeed. And I think we're really limiting ourselves if we are saying artificially that we're only going to consider people for advisory positions who live within the boundaries of the town of Yarmouth. I think we could consider broadening that as part of the matrix. So not everybody, of course, being from outside of the boundaries of the town, but I think that there's room for people who live outside of the direct boundaries to contribute to what we're doing in the community here. So that number one, I think. And as far as the matrix is concerned, I think it's just a good planning process to have frameworks from within to work. And if there are committees who are having difficulty developing the matrix for their committees, I think that that's just an opportunity to work with them to help them, so that over time we get them developed for all of our committees and boards.
Thank you.
Thank
Mayor,
you.
did you have your hand up again?
I did, actually. I'm probably just going to say what Belle said, but we are everybody's town. There's no question. Jeff lives in Argyle. If somebody said, what's your town, he's going to say Yarmouth. And although it upsets some people, sometimes, when people say, what's your population? On one day, I'll say 7,000. On another day, I'll say our population is somewhere between 25 and 50,000, because that's how many people the town services. And remember, when I say the town services, that's how many people that come in, and we pay for the services for those folks to enjoy. I think it's the biggest compliment ever when somebody from outside the town limits says, I would love to sit on one of the town committees. They're saying, in effect, that this is my town too. I care about it. What can I do to grow it? What can I do to help? Like, I get excited about those things. And I agree. I think it was Belle or Gil that just said, those boundaries are, the boundaries are there, and we respect them. But citizens don't see them like that. We only see them as units, financially responsible for a certain area. But other than that, the citizens, certainly visitors that come to town. Wade knows this in tourism. I've never met a tourist yet that says, oops, I just crossed over into the municipality, or I just crossed over into the town boundary. Like, it just doesn't happen. We're the only ones that see these boundaries. And when you don't live out of town and you value the town enough to want to sit on a committee, I think that's a really, really great thing. And we've got a lot of pretty cool people that want to do that. And it just makes us richer to have them at the table. So I'm all for getting rid of, we need to respect that, the folks in town are the taxpayers. They need to be on the committees as well. But, those voices are, what we need is a vast array of voices. And I think that helps to eliminate that one barrier at least. Thanks, Deputy.
Councillor Dares?
Yeah, one final comment, and Pam kind of a little bit stole my thunder, but I just wanted to point out that at least twice this afternoon, members of this council have complimented staff for the work that they do and how lucky we are to have the staff that we have. And if you look around the room, if we had a residency policy for staff, we wouldn't have many senior staff on town. So I just want to point out the value of reaching out beyond the town boundaries. Thank you.
Nope, I think that's important. As it's been said, I just think whatever committees are, they should be reflective of what our town looks like. Color, gender, socioeconomic. We take all those things into consideration. I know the Recreation Committee is kind of going through the same thing of making their own matrix at the moment, and I've seen it before. I think it's a great thing, and diversity and widespread and just taking everything into account is very important. So did you get what you need there, CAO? Your mic's off.
Sorry. Thank you. Yeah, kind of. There were some other questions on the list there that I kind of turned out pretty quickly. I would you folks prefer to appoint people for 1 or 2 year terms, or would you prefer to appoint people for 4-year terms, or for the balance of your mandate? That's kind of a question I have.
Councillor Cleveland?
All right, as far as terms go, and I was going to mention that when it comes to deadlines, I think it should last a term and then everyone gets to go. It's a lot of work going through this whole process, and what I've done with the Mariners Center, developing the matrix in and of itself, but then setting everyone up with kind of how long have you been here. There's always should be an infusion of fresh blood. It's kind of important. Although now that I'm listening to myself talk, I am thinking that you can't completely turn over any kind of a committee to any degree, but you do have to have some kind of a term in that someone can drop off and someone else gets an opportunity to come on for the voices and for the fresh blood. I do think that that's important.
Thank you. Mayor Move?
Yeah, absolutely. So I always go back to the Wren and what we did there, and I'm sure that it's happened at the airport before, where I call it tiers, but that's not the right word. What's the right word, Jeff?
Stagger. Stagger,
thank you. There I was without my second cup of coffee. To stagger those terms and to make sure that that's done from the committee level as opposed to just the town. So if we're looking at you're serving 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, and so you always have that experience at the table, and you always have the fresh blood. So what Wade's saying, you need that mix of both. And I really think it's tremendously important that all the committees do that. We've had some committees, probably still do, that have had the same people, forever. And there's no infusion of new ideas, as great as the committee members are. We want that experience and both. So staggered terms, I feel like should be a priority on every single committee and board that we provide members to.
Thank you. Councillor Bell?
I just want to echo what the mayor has said with regard to succession planning, and I think that's part of the staggered term piece. But it's really important that we capture the experience and the knowledge of the people that are serving and transfer that knowledge to the next generation so that we aren't constantly having to go back and reinvent the wheel. So I think succession planning is really important, and staggered terms are part of that succession plan so that we don't ever run into a situation where a committee is or an advisory group is starting fresh with all new members. Very disruptive and difficult to maintain momentum and hard for the staff. So succession planning, I think, is really critical. Thank you.
Agreed. That experience is important. For someone who come in late to a term, I know the people around the table that knew what was going on and mentored me in and kind of let me know. And, I can't imagine all being spanking new and moving forward with a lot of the work that's already been done previous. So I definitely agree with that. Councillor Heather? Mic's off.
Thanks. I can't find the printout right now on my phone, but I think I remember reading something about that one of the identified things for committee appointments was they could only sit on one committee in the town, Jeff, and that kind of surprised me. I didn't realize that was maybe a policy in place now or a practice, and I just wondered if that was something that was necessary.
So that is a policy, and we've bumped up against it in the past a few times when people have wanted to sit on multiple committees. That previous councils have used it as kind of a criteria. Well, we've already appointed them to the Heritage Committee, so we can't accept them on another board or committee. So that currently is a policy. But again, this is about what do you want, and what are your thoughts on that?
Myself, I personally think if they're good, they're good. except the only thing is the monopolizing. I guess you wouldn't want someone, on everything and to kind of, control-wise, I guess. But to me, if they're involved citizens and they care, I'd want them there. So, I mean, personally, anyhow. Councillor Cleveland?
Well, that policy seems a bit hypocritical, and that, Councillor Steve, how many actual committees are you on? How many committees am I on? I'm on 4 or 5. Of course, it's our job, but if someone fits that matrix, maybe you could limit it to, like, I don't know, 2 or 3, but saying you're on one and that's the end of it seems a bit hypocritical.
And I've noticed in the past too, with volunteers and things that go on, you often get the same people for everything you do. So leaving them out, you're leaving those people who really want to give their time and whatnot. And I mean, unfortunately, it works that way, and we're definitely open to all those who want. But often it's the same people who do things and get things done, and if they want to volunteer and do a great job, who are we to say no? So, any other discussion on that? CAO?
I wanted to ask one more question while we're on this. And I know we're getting long in the meeting, but just the idea of the nomination process. Council doesn't have a nominating committee. Some of our boards have their own nominating committees, which is great. What are your thoughts on, or what are council's thoughts on, should advisory committees form nominating committees themselves, or should council have a nominating committee for our advisory committees and any boards that don't have their own nominating committee? And maybe don't want a nominating committee at all, but I think I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Councillor Wade?
Without trying to be funny, maybe we should ask the committees. With the Mariner Center, we have a nominating committee. Of course, we went to the process of developing the matrix and the whole thing. But for example, next time we're at PAC, perhaps we should ask. And if they're more interested in having us take care of that work, then that's fine. But if they want to take that work into themselves, who are we to stop them?
Councillor Lesser?
I'd be a little leery of having council do all that work, because although we're an amazing council, you're not always going to have that. So you run the risk if you have some kind of a movement in a community, and all of a sudden you get a bunch of people in there with a very vested interest in changing the way things are done, to the detriment of the population, and they somehow get elected. Then they would have a lot more say in how all the committees run. I don't think it hurts to have us involved, but I'm not sure if council should be directly involved in nominating who's on them, and I think the committees themselves probably could do a good job of forming that.
Thank you. Mayor Moog?
I don't know where I am on this, because I'm trying to figure out how it goes. It's probably different everywhere. So for Mariner Center, for example, you just nominate your people, and does it come to council for ratification?
Yeah, for the Mariner Center, just as an example, we do have a matrix. We have a nominating committee. We actually do our own advertising to encourage people to apply. We go through that process and then make a recommendation to you. You could approve it or not approve it. But as far as the nominations themselves and the vetting process, we do that.
Okay. I like that part. I'm not particularly fond of a committee just nominating and with no oversight from council, I guess. But that's just me. So
council will always make the decision, right? It's a matter of, do you want the committee to do the legwork along with staff that support the committees? So take example, your Heritage Advisory Committee. Your Heritage Coordinator would work with your committee. The Heritage Committee would look at their matrix. They might craft an ad or figure out a recruitment process that reaches into the community. Maybe it's with the water bills or whatever. and they would ultimately get a slate of candidates and make a nomination to the council. But it is ultimately the council's decision.
And I'm in favor of that. I'm particularly in favor of letting them do their thing and it coming to us for the ratification. That's where I am.
Councillor Dares?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the committees that I serve on, and I'll use the Accessibility Committee as a prime example, where we received applicants and we, as a committee, advanced a number of names to council for appointment. I think that worked well. I'm not sure that, and I do think, yes, it needs to have council ratification, but I think in some cases it should be up to the committee to make that decision, or at least advance the, I really don't want to be a member of a committee that appoints to all the other committees. I don't think that's a role that I would be comfortable in, and I don't think it's one that any of us have the experience to do, quite honestly. So I think we stay with the status quo, where the committees and boards and commissions identify the people that they want in those roles, and we go from there.
So that is status quo. Sorry to jump in, Mr. Chair, but that is status quo for some, but not all. And so I think if that's the model that we like, it's that we'll have to get some of the committees who now have relied on, Lindsay runs an ad, we get some applications, and then it comes to council to pick from among them. I think we need to push that process if they're willing to do it. And I think, the people we have sitting around our various advisory committee tables are very likely to be interested enough to help us with that process, to help us find successors and fellow committee members. But just to say that isn't the status quo on every committee, but I do think it is a effective model where it is in place.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, I favor that model because everything is coming back to council, and I think that the committees are advisory committees to council to start with, so we still have an element of control. I would, however, hope that there was some framework that had some consistency in the framework that's being used by the nominating committees that are established with regard to potential applicants, so that there are criteria, baseline criteria that are being considered in the process. So, yeah.
So all of I keep jumping in to answer, but I consider this more conversational. So, with every advisory committee, we try to make sure that we have a staff person who's sort of the staff lead, staff support. And so having that consistency, I've been thinking about that as the conversation is going on. I think we can manage that kind of at the staff level to kind of have an outline of a process for recruitment. And, it won't have to be rigorously followed because we want to allow room for the committees to tailor it to their needs. But yeah, I think a certain degree of consistency has to be adhered to, but not a rigorous level.
Councillor Heather.
Thank you. Yes, I agree with the model of the committees kind of doing their own recruitment or of new committee members. And I guess thinking of if it came to council and council had to appoint these people each and every time to all the committees, I don't feel qualified to do that for every committee. I don't know what every committee does, so I wouldn't know who to recruit or who to look at to do that work. So I think the committees themselves know what they do. They know what they need, and can do that. And if they need help, then they can come to council, to the staff, and we can put an ad in the paper, and then those people, the names that come forward, could go back to the to the committee themselves, and the committee can choose from the names that are put forward. Thank you.
Councillor Lesser?
Just for clarification, what I was saying before, obviously I don't think we're the best council in the world, but it's sorry. I think I said the world. There might be a few other places in the world that are good. But what I was referring to is, I don't know if I said that right, but it's kind of like, I'm thinking of like the old boys club, where you have a bunch of people that are elected and they put all their friends into council or into the committees, and you don't get that, the diversity that we were talking about. So in the case of, if there's certain people you don't want on, that becomes more public by them coming to us, bringing it to us, and then we have to kind of justify as to why we don't think some of those recommendations are good. But, we would trust, I think we could trust that our committees are established well enough that they'll pick, good choices and move forward. But it's kind of, I guess what I was referring to is kind of like the thought of like the old boys club, I guess.
I'll take it. Go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, that certainly is a concern. We have had some experience in time that I've been here where I can think of one board that would make nominations, but it was always the same people, and it was never put to council that they even had a choice in that. And so I would suggest to you that a red flag that you may want to watch for going forward as a councillor is when a committee doesn't introduce new blood, is only interested in reappointing the existing people, and puts any pressure on you to not consider other applicants. I think that's a red flag that maybe things are getting a little too closed. The old boys club. But I think the direction that I'm hearing from this council today is open, it's inclusive, it's broad thinking, and it's decentralizing. You're asking your committees and your boards to do the work in finding their successors, and I think that from council to your committees and boards shows confidence. And so we can take this, Mr. Chair, what we've gotten from this discussion, unless there's other things people want to address. And Lindsay and I will work on an updated policy for you and bring it back for the April meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. Great discussion on that one. Okay. 9B, Yarmouth Events Association, Earth Day Cleanup.
So, Mr. Chair, you have before you on this agenda today, you have 3 applications for grants that were received after the deadline. And so we have put them on your agenda for your consideration. One of them, the first one is for an event. It's a new event. The second one is for the rekindling of a successful past event that due to COVID hasn't been held the last couple of years. And the third one is a tax grant request that came in late. So when we dealt with your other grant requests that came in, you did them through a process of using a spreadsheet and every councillor making an allocation, and then we averaged and you stayed within a budget limit that you self-imposed. So I guess the question, I don't have a different suggestion for you at this point on these, except that I think you, rather than dealing with them differently, it might be appropriate that we give you some kind of a matrix to use. But the question I don't have the answer to is your budget limit. You did save $10,000 from your previous work for late applications. That wouldn't necessarily apply to the tax grant request. The tax grants are always a separate pool. So I would suggest to you that for now and for grants for the 22-23 year, you have $10,000 left to work with. You have 2 applications that might qualify to be considered from that pool. And then you have this other tax grant that I would say your pool of money for that one is anywhere from 0 to the amount they've requested. And we didn't provide you with a spreadsheet because we weren't sure how you wanted to deal with these. But if you'd like to deal with these in that way, we can prepare that for you and circulate it and have them submitted into Lindsay.
Thank you. Mayor Moon?
Yeah, I've got a few things to say, starting with what Jeff just said. How are we going to handle these? I think it's fair that since we averaged 7 thoughts of where the money should go for all of the other applicants that were on time, that we should do the same for this. So I guess we can decide that. I'll just start by saying that the first one, and again, just my opinion, the Earth Day one, for me, it's a complete no. It's not that it doesn't have value, but we have Waste Check that we pay an awful lot of money to, that does that work. And does it very, very well. So, opening the public purse to pay for an event for cleanup, to me, is not prudent or fiscally responsible. The other concern I have, I got a lot of concerns with this one, but that whole community engagement. I know everything looks awful now because it's winter, the snow is melting, and we can all see garbage. But I can say without question that every year our citizens get out there, they clean up, they're excited about it. It's community engagement 101. They just, and I believe, no, I don't believe, I know. Waste Check provides bags, and they provide gloves, and, they provide the tools that the citizens need to do this. It's free. Shouldn't be paying for something to provide cleanup when we can do it for free. I respect the application. I respect, the councillor that put it forward from the municipality. But for me, it's a no. I feel really strongly about saying to the citizens who are out there every single day, cleaning up bags, and we know them, the Tims, of the world, my goodness, Mark Brophy, he's one of our own, that are out there every single day, doing this for their community for free, just because they care about the community, and then saying we're going to pay for an event. It just doesn't feel right to me. The car show was late, and that's okay. We know why it was, because they didn't know if they were going to be able to hold it. It is, to me, our biggest event, next to Seafest, but it kind of falls part and parcel with. It's the most amazing event I think that's ever come to town, and they show up and they do such an amazing job every year. It's important to look at every one of these applications in detail, because they are giving money away. Not a fan of providing money, all the funds. Doesn't mean we don't provide all the funds for organizations that are giving the money away to other organizations as well. We want to help these events get up and running. So I'll support it, but it would never be the full amount. And I'm having a hard time with the tax one, because it's been every year we do this. They apply every year, and I don't know what happened this year. They forgot, or it's late, or whatever happened, but and this is just me again, what I'm going to do, it wouldn't be the full amount, certainly for the taxes, because it's just not fair to the ones that got theirs in on time. But those are my initial thoughts, on top of the, how are we going to do this? Hopefully it's just divide by 7. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dares?
Well, I guess I'll comment in reverse order than the mayor. So in regard to the tax application, I just want to point out, our deadline is January 28th. And this is a volunteer board. And having served on a number of volunteer boards, I know that sometimes, especially in the times of COVID, things get missed. And this is one of those things that perhaps got missed. And if it's been our habit to forgive them the taxes in recent years, then I think, because they didn't realize that they hadn't put the application in on time. And I know that happened to me when I was president of the Sports Heritage Association, and the person that was assigned to applying for the grants at one point in time just forgot to do it. And we realized like a day or two after the deadlines, and I had to throw myself on the sword and go and beg forgiveness from the town and the municipality of Argyle, who were all quite happy to accept our late application, thank God, because it flies on a wing and a prayer. And so I'm a little bit more forgiving when it's a volunteer board that may have, for one reason or another, perhaps they changed board members, perhaps the person that typically was involved in grant applications was ill, for whatever reason, they're late. But if we've given that grant in the past to that amount, then I would have no problem supporting that amount in the future. You talked about the car show, and I will say this about the car show. This is the one that really excites me because unlike some of the other events that take place in town, the car show is all brand new money coming to town. It's people from away visiting here and filling our restaurants and filling our hotels, and they take nothing with them when they leave. Last year, I can tell you that I had company in town, or the last time the car show was here, sorry. I had company in town that were looking for some good old-fashioned homemade fish and chips. And I couldn't find any on Saturday. I couldn't get near a restaurant on Saturday. They were plugged solid, and it was because of the car show. So that's one of those events that really fuels the economy in this area and is, and I'll say it out loud, unlike, for example, the Rib Fest, which is a hell of a nice party, but they come to town with all their product and they leave town with our money. And so, not that it's a bad event, but just it's a complete opposite of what the car show provides. And finally, I'll want to just respond to the Earth Day cleanup. Waste abatement, of course, has been something that's been very near and dear to my heart, and it's why I volunteered to be on the Waste Park Committee and also on Waste Check. I will say this: Waste Check is a regional entity. It serves Digby, Clare, Municipality of Argyle, Yarmouth, and Municipality of Yarmouth. And as such, they don't have the budget, they don't have the human resources, and they certainly don't have the mandate to organize events. They will provide, as you know, they will provide garbage and garbage bags and litter bags and this sort of thing, and they'll pick up, and they'll also record those amounts, and they'll do that sort of thing. But to organize an actual event that focuses on litter abatement, I don't think is realistic to expect that Waste Check would be in a position to do that. We have a group that wants to create an event to generate interest. Litter's a blight in our community, and I've said this before, that, I remember I traveled 4,200 kilometers through the province of Alberta at one point in the spring of the year before their litter abatement program had kicked in, and I saw less litter in that 4,200 kilometers than I did between Pubnico and Yarmouth. So litter has been an issue in this community for a very long time. And again, talking consolidation, are we stuck to the boundaries? There's been beach cleanups that have been organized by this very group and by Scotia Shores, including Port Maitland Beach, which is enjoyed by a lot of members of the town of Yarmouth. A lot of people from town enjoy Port Maitland Beach and Johns Cove Beach. So we enjoy those areas. Are we opposed to doing a cleanup in that area or supporting a cleanup? I'm not saying that we should give them all of the money that they've asked for. I'm not suggesting that that's the case, but I am thinking that any effort to clean up our community should be applauded and supported. Waste Check, I know, will participate in this event by providing the same services that they have in the past. And I'm one of those people that have, participated in Waste Check cleanups on around Earth Day, year after year. But I'm still supporting this, and I think that it's an opportunity to engage more demographics, more people in litter abatement, bring more attention to the matter. And so I will be supporting in some way the effort to create an event that gets people talking, gets people interested, gets them motivated and excited about cleaning up our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heather.
Thank you, Deputy. Yeah, I'm going to speak to all three of these as well, starting with the Earth Day cleanup. And just to let folks know that this is just not a cleanup. It is basically a party out at the Mariner Centre to follow the cleanup with the bouncy castle and rental of the Mariner Centre and a band playing. And so for me, I'm like Mayor Mood, this is a big no-no for me. We have people out in the community that do this every day, free of charge. And I don't see having a party for litter cleanup to be an effective use of taxpayers' money. I also see on their budget that they're putting part of their request as $100 for bags. Waste Check supplies bags free. That shouldn't be on their list. Just lots of red flags for me on this event. I respect, as well the councillor for the municipality that put this forward. I know that it's an attempt to do something for the community. I just don't think that it's the right thing for the right event for litter cleanup. Waste Check does go into the schools. They'll go to any school where they're requested. I see that this is part of what they're proposing with this event, is to go into schools and talk to children. Waste Check does that. So I just don't get what it is that they're trying to do other than to have a party after the litter cleanup. And so for me, I can't support putting taxpayers' money into that one. So that's where I stand on that one. The car show, what can you say? I mean, that is the highlight of our downtown for the summer. With Seafest and the car show, it brings people in. I've already got friends that have Facebooked me and said, we've got our rooms booked, we're coming, right? It brings money into the town. It the hotels, the food industry, the shops downtown. And so I will be certainly supporting that. And I know it is a late entry, but they didn't, because of COVID, they couldn't really prepare and put in a grant on time, given with the restrictions that were in place at the time of the grant deadline. So I certainly respect that. The Tri-County Women's Center tax grant, the deadline was the end of January. It came in March. So I certainly will not be supporting that in full. It's just not fair to the people that have gotten their grants in on time and done what they're supposed to do. The Tri-County Women's Center has been in business for a long time, and I think by now they would be aware of and have that written on a calendar somewhere that this is tax grant application time and this is when we do it. And so coming in late, I think there's a penalty to be paid for that. So that's where I stand on those three. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Heather. Councillor Cleveland.
All right, thank you. Just one thing I want to say. Actually, there's a whole bunch of things I want to say, but one thing I want to say to begin with is, as a guy who, for some reason, always seems to look at things from a tourism standpoint, I am really, really excited about this year because, of course, after 2 years of COVID, it finally looks like things are slowly beginning to turn around. When it comes to these kind of applications, I know there is a deadline, and I absolutely agree with what everyone says about deadlines and that we should be sticking to them. But for me, from a tourism standpoint, when it comes to events, in my mind, a lot of people, and again, these events mostly are run by volunteers. When you're in a situation like COVID, you reach a point where you're not sure whether it's worth doing the work, whether it's worth not doing the work. What do you do? Now that things are beginning to open up, I personally am prepared to listen to anybody who wants to have their event return, especially something like the car show, which is, of course, what I'm building up to. We don't have a ton of money. I know we don't. And really, overall, we didn't support even the coal shed or Seafest to the amount that they asked. And it is what the car show asked for is a significant amount. But I do plan to support that event with as much money and even sweat labor as I can put together, because I believe that it's very important this year, especially for us, to make a stand that we are open for business, that we are ready for tourism to come back again. It's an important industry that seems to be sometimes in the general public kind of poo-pooed off as if it's not a huge moneymaker, but of course it is. So I plan to support that as much as I possibly can. The points for the other two are extremely valid, and I'm not going to bother to repeat them again. When it comes to cleanups, I'm right there with everyone else when it comes to doing cleanups and getting them done. Not sure what a bouncy castle or a band has to do with it. So there's that. With the other, Gil, I was ready to say absolutely no, but your point about a volunteer board gave me pause. And so, you know, if we can do something, I'm more than willing to try. I guess that's all I have. So on this particular issue, I'm sitting firmly on the fence.
Thank you, Councillor Cleveland. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I just want to echo Councillor Cleveland's comments regarding the car show. I think it's the best of all worlds. We're coming out of COVID. This is a primarily outdoor event that brings an incredible amount of people into the community and provides both locals and visitors with a spectacular show. So I am certainly prepared to entertain a late submission, given the fact that until the 21st of March, we were still under COVID restrictions. I do have an issue, however, with providing flow-through funds for volunteer organizations to then give money to other volunteer organizations. And when I went through the car show budget, I see that you know, they didn't go in the red, and they were able to provide a significant amount of money for volunteer organizations, which is great, except that I don't think the taxpayers of Yarmouth should be providing money that then another organization gets to decide who it benefits. So while I will be supporting the application, it probably won't be to the full amount. And I will take those things into consideration in assessing how much I think we're able to support them. With regards to the Earth Day event, the last time I checked, Earth Day has been happening for a long time. And this feels to me like a very rushed, put together application, almost like an event in search of a cause. And I cannot support a large contribution to this because, for a number of reasons. I don't think that it is. I don't think that there has been the collaboration that I'd like to see with all of the organized volunteer efforts that are already underway in the community to provide community cleanups. I mean, we all know about them. We all know the people that are out there doing that work all the time. And we know that Waste Check is there as our official representative for waste reduction services. And it doesn't feel to me like there's been a collaboration or even a thought that for the organizers that, oh, there are other parties in the community that maybe we should be working with in order to develop a really interesting event. So I'd like to see a proof of concept. Maybe they should start small this year and forgo the bouncy castles and the PA systems and the rental at the Mariners Center and concentrate on getting a community event organized where people contribute to cleaning up the environment. And then perhaps next year we can look at expanding that effort in collaboration with all the other groups that are out there doing this. I'd just like to make an observation that according to my calculations, when I looked at their budget, fully 1/3 of that budget is to pay people. And I'm not sure why we need to be paying people to organize a volunteer effort to, to do duplicative things, because Waste Check does go into the schools, and Waste Check is providing services that help ordinary citizens like me who take care of a couple of streets along with my neighbors in my own community every year and have been doing it for a long time. But they provide, coordination for that. They give us materials to do it, and they make sure it gets picked up. So I think it's a little bit of a rushed application, and I don't think I can support it this year. But I'd like to see them start, and maybe they can grow something for future years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Lesser.
Actually, I think Councillor Dares was first.
Councillor Dares.
Sure. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. Number one is I've spoken to the people that were trying to organize the Earth Day event. And of course, this was in some sense, you're right. The budget was put together quite hastily, and the event was pulled together quite hastily because they had correspondence with Scotian Shores people who wanted to come to the area and do some significant, education, but generate some enthusiasm around the project. In talking to people involved in the organization, the Yarmouth Events Association, a couple things that I want to clarify. Number one is none of the salaries that were indicated were going to local people. They were to offset expenses for people coming in from outside the area with Scotian Shores, I believe, and other organizations. Secondly, they know that they're going to have to scale back this event, and that probably nobody's going to want to pay for a bouncy council. But I think where I was going with it is I just want to provide encouragement to anybody that wants to do something that cleans up our community. And so, as I indicated when I first spoke, had no intentions of supporting them to the amount that they wanted, but I wanted to provide some encouragement for somebody to do something to create an event. I participated year after year in the Earth Day events, and both before and after Earth Day, we used to do a major cleanup with the staff at the Mariners Center. But there aren't as many people out there picking up garbage as one might think. There's a few organized groups, there's a few individuals, but there's not a full-scale effort underway. And I think that was what the intention was for this, is to let's try to do something to incite some interest and some enthusiasm and some excitement in cleaning up our community. So that's where I'm coming from. Are they going to get everything they want or need? Probably not. But I wanted to provide some encouragement. And so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Councillor Lesher.
Yeah, if I could rewind it a little bit, I think Wade said exactly what I was going to say, like word for word. I think along with everybody else or most other people, it's an expensive event for cleanup, and I'd rather see the money put into the actual cleanup as opposed to the events around it. There are the other events that we can get our children involved in, and I mean that's gonna on that same property there's gonna be a splash park pretty soon, and those kind of things. So I have a hard time with that one, although I deeply respect the councillor that put it through from the community, and I understand for sure the rationale that he would have on it. and it's to build some excitement, as Gil said, around getting people to want to come out. And the draw would be music and the bouncy castle, and I think it could potentially grow to that at some point, but maybe with sponsors as opposed to taxpayers' dollars might work better. There might be a company out there that has a bad record of waste reduction or something that might say, if I throw some money into this, then it can, it's kind of like the carbon tax type of thing. So as far as the Women's Center, that's a tough one for me. I fully support the Women's Center and always have. When I was working at the high school, they were a valuable resource for us. It is hard though when it comes in late, and I think that's a whole other discussion we need to continue to have around our policy, and even the amounts that people are applying for. Like, I think we should have a limit on what people can apply for, so they realize that we're not funding any events. We're supporting a lot of events or a lot of things, but we're not fully supporting anything. So having the amount reduced so that you don't apply if you're looking for an amount above that. And the car show, like I said about the coal shed, I was in favor of that. It had nothing to do with who's organizing it or not. Like I said, I don't actually go to the coal shed much because in the summer I like to kind of keep to myself. And when I was working at the high school, I don't always want to run into everybody that I was around all year. But I know that the people who go to it love the event, and it's a free event for them. And some of the people that go there need those free events. And the car show is the same thing. I looked at the car show the last time it was here and thought it's getting to the point of almost being, except for the length of time of what the Wharf Rat Rally was, but in a very controlled, like everything's very controlled about it. And it was so amazing to see it. Actually, we had a group of Chinese kids here that summer. We brought, I think, 15 Chinese kids, elementary kids, through the car show, and they just thought, like, what an incredible town. They didn't realize really fully what was going on. They just thought it's so cool that this town has all these old cars sitting on Main Street and people are just walking around all the time. But it was good. I mean, I went down and spent money. I went to stores like the Yum Yum Tree that doesn't exist anymore and bought souvenirs that I haven't done for years. But I would support, and I like the idea of supporting any event that gets people out, especially this summer, because we need to rebuild that. And I think the car show is a good one, just like I thought the coal shed. I do, as I said before, for the Women's Center, I have an issue with things coming in late. And I do understand there can always be a reason. With the planning around activities and events, it is, COVID definitely would have put some pressure on that. I know in the past, like we looked at the coal shed a few years ago, and before we had a chance to even vote on it, they knew they weren't going to go ahead with it because of COVID. So, some of those events are hard to plan for well in advance when you're dealing with a pandemic. So I think Wade actually probably said what I was thinking the most. I think I'm pretty in line with that. I would love to give something to everybody, and I think all of us would. But there's only so much money, and unfortunately, we were voted in to make sure that we control that money in a fair way, and not what our personal views are, just what the community would want. And I think the community this summer wants events happening, and events that's not going to cost them much to get into or free. So that's my rant.
Thank you. Mayor Mood?
Yeah. Yeah, Derek, you're right. Everybody would love to give money, and there's only so much to go around. There's also, for me, this is another tangent, but it's money versus responsibility. And, I'm increasingly concerned. I understand because I get schooled on it all the time by our CAO. It's okay, Jeff. You're the best. You keep me in line. We are a town, and we are the hub. We are the economic center, and I fully understand that. And I'm proud and thankful to be the mayor of that very entity. I think Gil mentioned, I think it was Gil mentioned something about boundaries. You know what? I think we really don't, we don't see the boundaries like maybe some others do. But, you know, I look at some of these events, the car show, for example, and I can't off the top of my head, I say we gave 11,000 the last time. And for example, Modi gave 2,000. It's a regional event. And I find it, as much as it upsets people when I say this, I find it increasingly concerning that, you know, for these regional events, sometimes, you know, they may not happen if the town didn't step up and pay the vast majority of what's being asked, you know, and it's very easy for others to just say, you know, I'm going to throw, you know, a few dollars at it and nobody notices. But if we don't throw the full amount, you know, we get ourselves in a little bit of trouble. So we have to think about that. You know, sometimes we have to pick and choose. We have to, in my estimation, we have taxpayers, and they can't and shouldn't be footing the bill, you know, to the largest extent for all these regional events. And sadly, again, I said it, if we didn't do that, they wouldn't happen. So it's really concerning to me, you know, the money versus the responsibility that we take on to make sure that they happen is, it's really concerning, because our taxpayers, obviously, you know, I mean, we've done the math, and our taxpayers make the least amount of money, have the least ability to pay, and we are dishing out the most to make sure that all these events happen on a regional basis. So we just need to stand up a little bit more and encourage these organizations to have those tough conversations with other funding groups, because we can't continue to fund everything for everyone. So I don't know why I felt like I had to say that, but I did. There you go.
Thank you, Mayor Mood. Councillor Heather.
Thank you, Deputy. Just a clarification on the car show application. They haven't, that I can see anywhere, identified an amount that they're asking for this year. They've just said very politely that at this late date, any assistance would be appreciated. So I think the last car show, the 11,000 was given, as you said, Mayor, but this time they're just asking for whatever assistance can be given. Looking at their financial statement, they certainly, and credit to them, they go out and look for monies from other places. There's over $9,000 of donations from businesses, local businesses, that were given to them to help support it on the last car show. So they had $9,000 from that. I think their total expenses were only about $13,000. So there were only $4,000 really that was really needed from the two other entities, the Modi and ourselves. So they do look for monies from other places. And if it's the same this year, the amount that they would need from the town would certainly not be what was given on the last occasion. So, and they do have money in their budget left from previous car shows. So just to kind of clarify that, thanks.
Thank you. Great discussion around this. Many of the thoughts that I've had have already been spoken about, and I promised myself when I became a councillor I wouldn't become an echo chamber. So when things are said by other people that I want to say, then I don't need to repeat them. But certainly appreciate everything that's been said. And for me, obviously the car show is a premier event here. I think of that and Seafest and the coal shed, and that's what people do in the summer, and the Shark Scramble as well. That's kind of what draws people in. As everybody said, I'm very happy that events are back and that we can even talk about supporting them. So it's a great place to be. But we'd love to have money to support everything and let it flow and give everyone 100%. But when I first became a councillor, having some discussions with some veterans on on council, Councillor Hood once told me that the right decisions are often the hard ones. So that's why we're here, to make the rough ones. And, you know, we certainly appreciate the work that everybody does. The amount of dollars that we give or don't give is not a reflection of the work you do for our community, but, you know, these are hard decisions. And if anyone's watching and they are members of these and they want to reach out and have a quick chat with us, I always appreciate having that one-on-one. And sometimes you get to know a little more information that may change your mind. So definitely this discussion today has brought me a lot to think about, and I'm glad we're here. So I would appreciate if we do it like we did as discussed. We all do a number, average it out. I think that's the fairest way, and we'll go from there, I guess. So is that all we need on that, CAO?
If that's the way you wish to proceed, a motion to request staff to circulate a matrix or a spreadsheet, and then we'll do that and give you out the results as soon as we get the submissions.
Perfect.
I'll make that motion there, Deputy.
Perfect. I see Councillor Bell. Did you second that?
Yes.
Perfect. I think we had a lengthy discussion on that one. So all in favor, do so by raising your hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you for the great discussion. Okay, 9E, accessibility plan. The recommended motion is that council adopt an accessibility action plan as presented. Motion by Councillor Dare, seconded by Councillor Lesser. Any discussion on that one? Oh, no, Councillor Wade's ready to go. Councillor Lesser?
Just a thank you to those, Bell and the others that took some time to help a little bit with some of the wording. It's good to go over those with a fine tooth comb when you're doing it, and very much appreciate it. And I'm glad that this committee can finally say that they've kind of reached that first milestone. And there's a lot of really good volunteers in that group.
I think it's great having this skill set on here, that someone can be in an editor background and kind of look at those things that a lot of us don't, see. I read it over the first time and thought it was great. And, some of the discussion about things that should be changed and proper language is important, especially when this is going to be a plan that, we really push forward. And so thanks for that, Councillor Bell. So all in favor, do so by raising your hand. Opposed? Motion carried. Awesome. 9F, capital budget. This be Jerry or Jeff?
Jerry's with us, so just give him a second. There he is.
Go ahead, sir.
I'm here. I don't know if you've followed on the agenda, or maybe does Lindsay want to share a screen? They're one page. Not sure what you want to do. I'm just looking at scroll down through the agenda, and I'm on the page for the town's capital budget, but it doesn't help the viewers, I guess. There we go. So yeah, Town of Yarmouth capital budget or proposed budget for the 22-23 fiscal year. So I've had a few conversations with directors and other staff talking about wishes and wants and needs, and we've tried to really limit some of the projects, but even at doing that, we're still kind of maxed out at the $2.5 million range. So just quickly across the top.
Mr. Barron?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, for the sake of people that may be watching, if the font on the screen can be increased. It's very difficult to, thank you very much. Sorry to interrupt.
So just, I guess across the top, just to understand the different columns, the first column listed as like my ground zero is the current year that we're in. So this is to the end of February, we still have not spent these amounts. The only exception with that would be in number 12, you'll see we've kind of overspent that line of what we budgeted. So you'll see that in column 1 is the proposed budget for next year. So I've increased that line item to 325 to help cover what was spent this year. The capital fund itself has the money there to kind of cash flow wise to carry us through till April's budget start of the new year. So that's kind of where I sat with the property thing, and that was the piece of land that we ended up buying out in Lake George through the town. We've recently bought another one, I guess, that everybody knows, but it went through the water utility accounts. So really for today's discussion, we really want to focus on column 1. Columns 2 to 5 are kind of what we see happening in the future years. But as you know, things change. And I know if I look at the budget for the current year that's being proposed for 22-23, it's quite different than what the plan might have been last year for the same presentation. So I think what I'll do for speeds wise, we'll focus on column 1, and I'll just run down through the list. So we do have some money in the fire department that needs to be spent, a little bit more breathing apparatus, and that's kind of a project trying to rotate through numerous pieces of breathing apparatus, and also the requirement with new volunteers coming in. So once volunteers get to a certain point in their training, breathing apparatus is assigned to them, and it has to be specifically for that individual. The training structures, number 4, in the behind the fire hall with new recruits coming in, there's a requirement for I try to do a little more vigorous and more training. The structures that are back there now are getting old, and I guess past what their useful life is, and how we can train on those. So there's a bigger project in number 5, which was pushed out to the future year, and that's the kind of upgrade the whole back area of the fire hall, drainage and all that kind of stuff. But for now, the urgent part was actually just to upgrade the equipment or structures that were there. There's also a piece of equipment that they're trying to find and purchase. Doesn't quite fit in the operational budget, so we have $25,000 for some equipment there. The main piece of that is the new Jaws of Life. Number 10 is the sidewalk and trail projects. So we've got grants coming. This $400,000 would represent the town's share of that. So I think when I did the math, the actual total cost of the project, you stick a 1 in front of that, so it's 1.4 million. So, but we'll be receiving roughly $1 million in grants towards that project. The Mariner Center expansion, some money there for capital requirements, and if it's not used for in the Mariners on Main and different capital requests there, then again that money would be carried forwards for any larger project that's down the road. Street paving, trying to keep Chad filled with some money there. So we're carrying forward $160,000 from prior budgets. So we were able to just plug in another $300,000 current year. So Chad would actually have $160,000 or $460,000 to spend on street paving projects in the current year. Again, I just kind of mentioned the property, so bump that up to $325 to help offset the $250. Transfers to reserves. That was always trying to fit some reserve money in here. This year, I left that to the end, and I had about $66,000 left in the $2.5 million budget that I was cutting for. We have promised Splash Park a donation or contribution to $39,000. There's a waterfront project. I think council knows about a potential project down there of $100,000, or at least investigation and seeing what can be done down there. So there's money set aside for that. We get down to some equipment that is getting long in the tooth and for repairs, and not just age. Age is one indicator, but repairs seem to be climbing on these equipment. So we've put them off the last couple of years. So there's $190,000 for a new salt truck, $120,000 for replacing the sidewalk plow, and another $190,000 for a plow truck. So with the
what's the waterfront project? Did we skip that?
Your Worship, you're under a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, correct. Got it. And then Jeff, I just have to say this. Those fishing wharves, we have to start figuring that out with the feds. We're the only ones that don't get funded. Okay. Thanks, Jerry. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, the fishing wharves, we know there's some work to be done, but we've pushed it out again another year because, like I say, we do have some work to do with possible grants and working with other levels of government there. Just scroll back down, just trying to focus on the one column again. Have some work started on the Broadbrook channel cleaning. We had some money budgeted in prior year, so there's still 94,000 of that money left. But talking with the engineers, potentially another 100,000 required for the current year. So potential 195,000 to be spent this year on that. Town Hall, as you know, we've had a few issues with it. People keep thinking it's relatively new, but it's creeping up in age. So 20,000 was basically kind of trying to do an assessment on heating, ventilation, those types of systems, the kind that just kind of broke over Christmas on us and caused us a fair bit of renovations due to a flood. So kind of an assessment to see how we can avoid those kind of situations in the future. And also some window replacements. So we've had this project here is the 6 windows across the front of the building. Seems a lot of weather comes from that direction, and they've had just issues with leaks around them and that kind of thing. So most of them have the window sills themselves, the paint sprays, the chip blocks been replaced in the past and those types of things. So worked with Todd, our facilities manager, and he's got quotes to get the 6 of them done at about $10,000 a piece. Not cheap, but work to be done. Moving on down, there's I think that's in the wastewater area, the digester building, residing that. So that's, and also there's a lift station, panel upgrade, backflow valves. Again, I don't know the ins and outs of all that, but working with Rob, he assures me this work is the number that needs to be done to get the work done that he needs to get due. Again, then the last grouping there from 43 down, those are the bigger projects that we've kind of laid out and we've gone through applications for funding. So these are relatively big numbers, but we hope to have grants and they will proceed only if we do get funding for them. But in the current year, we do need some engineer work and consultant work done on those projects. So the two, the one that was our highest priority was the Vancouver Street, Main Street wastewater lines and those types of things. So getting consultants in and studies done and the conditions of those actual pitchers and pipes, about 50,000 to be spent this year, with the hopes that we get funding and we can complete a big project in the following year. And then the wastewater treatment plant assessment. So we know there's changes that need to be made, environmental requirements to be done. So just a full assessment of that plant itself, not just what's in it, but the outside, is make sure that when we are looking at all the electronics and things that are in there, that the full building is taken care of. So again, it's not new. Time flies by, and it's showing some age in the area. So before we spend a lot of money on it, had a budget put together, and it was close to 100,000 just to get a full and a good assessment done by engineers and consultants on that. So in the end, you can see we're still looking to spend another $2.5 million, just over, and we'll fund that through the town's operation fund, which we typically budget, close to $2 million through the fund. There's gas tax money. We do have a reserve for the town hall, so I'm going to pull in 85,000 to cover the 2 town halls projects, the 20,000 for the assessment and the window replacements. So we can use that money, and that will balance off, and I'll have the $2.56 million if these projects kind of line up with what council wishes. Trying to save you some time here, Deputy Mayor. I know your speed meetings are shot for tonight.
Take your time, Jerry.
No. So, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but any questions at all, just fire away. If I can't answer, someone here on the call can.
Any questions?
Like I say, a lot of staff time has gone into preparing this with the directors, and kind of you can see where we've pushed some things out into the future. Of course, they'd like to do all 3 years in the current year, but it's just not possible. So,
well, very thorough. Appreciate that, and I'm very thankful too for the columns that kind of show down the road as well, kind of to see where we're going and that as well. It's nice to know, you know, just for future planning. If it comes up with citizens, it's easy to say this is what we're going to do. So, Councillor Bell.
Relatively minor point in the budget, but I'm just interested in the Killamworth assessment. You've got $34,000 in the current year that has not been spent, and I'm wondering, has that assessment been done, or did it come in under budget, or why has that not been spent?
all I know for sure, I mean, I can, if Mark's still on or Jeff can speak of it as well, there was a chunk of change, I guess. I forget the amount now, but there was money spent. There was some assessment work done. 34 is left in what was budgeted, but I think the assessment is a continuing thing. Like every 6 months or every year, it has to be reviewed. So we've just carried that balance forward.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jerry?
Like I say, I will update the column 0. Obviously, as March here ends, we've processed a fair number of bills with the restrictions easing and people getting back out. So some of this, you know, column 0 will change, but definitely, you know, the proposed budget doesn't, and the future plans don't. It's just I will send out an update as when March is completed and everything's spent and bills are paid.
Perfect. Thanks for the great work, Jerry, as always. Are we going to review the water utility one as well, or?
We can do that. Again, it's the same format. There's column 0 is what's brought forward. So these amounts, again, were approved in prior year budgets. And again, I do have March there, but March isn't complete. I think I did that maybe the first week of March. So there's some work. Increase the font there for us too. Yeah, so there's some work, and that column 0 will change a bit as some bills come in March. But again, the capital budget for the water utility, we're looking at up to $840,000 spent in column 1. Again, we have a lead lateral project on the go, still working on the inventory piece, but we do expect there may be some lead laterals replacements that need to be done. So started with 100,000. We're not even 100% sure, but estimates from other municipal units have been in the $10,000 range per unit. So that's only, you know, letting us replace 10. Certainly there will be a lot more than that to be done over the year. So it is a longer term project. Smart meter upgrades. So we have a number in town, and basically the smart meter upgrades allow us to kind of do drive-bys and electronically collect readings. The meter reader doesn't have to stop the vehicle and walk into each individual house. So we want to move forward on the project to have the full town, full utility customers on smart meters. Just improves efficiency for our staff. And it's also the first step is, you know, my longer term goal, I guess, with this project is, and I think Moncton or Dieppe does it, from their office, they can basically, with an app on a computer, press a button and get the readings for the full town. So smart meters are the first step to moving towards that. So a longer term project, but we definitely want to get them installed in the full utility and all customers, just to improve efficiencies. And it also gives us a lot of our meters are older. I mean, they work, but until they stopped, no one's really double checking. There's just too many to do that. So this will be a full replacement of a number of meters. There is a backhoe. That's 2014. It's used the way the town and Public Works set up, we have 2 backhoes out there, and one is through the water utility and one's through the town accounts, because, you know, they're used, both versatile pieces of equipment that are used for any kind of breaks, whether it's water or sewer. But just to kind of split the cost up, one is run through the water books and one's through the town books. The water plant, part of that whole assessment is we already know the roof needs to be replaced down at the water plant. No, sorry, on the town side, that was the sewer treatment plant assessment. Getting them mixed up with Rob's work. So the water plant itself, roof replaced out there. And then there's the water main replacement. So that has to do with the project here that we've applied for funding. So if that project goes through, there will be a portion that'll be charged through the water utility for the water lines. And typically it's around a $240,000 project for that project. So those 5 projects alone add up to $840,000. Again, the funding for this, the water utility has a capital fund that has some availability in it, but as you know, the water utility itself has to expense its depreciation. So every year we're setting aside roughly right now, I think depreciation runs around $275,000 a year. So $275,000 a year through the water utility is put into its reserve. So that $840 will strictly come from that depreciation fund.
Thank you. Any other questions for Jerry? Hearing none, I guess we're good. So this is for information purposes, Jeff. We don't have to pass anything right now, or?
Well, we would like you to consider that, you know, and realizing, you know, these are big decisions. So if you want to deliberate, what I'd suggest you do is make a motion tonight to recommend to council and to the utility. If you want to spend some time thinking about it and maybe coming back with questions, then, you know, we'll put the town budget on the council meeting coming up in 2 weeks as a recommendation from Cal. In the time in between, if you have questions, you can email them and we can share the answers among the entire group. And then if you're comfortable at the council meeting, you can approve the capital budgets if that's your wish.
Perfect. Someone like to make that motion?
I'll make the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Dare, seconded by Councillor Bell. Any discussion on that one? Hearing none, all in favor do so by raising your hand. All opposed, motion carried. Thank you very much, Jerry. Great work.
Thank you.
Okay, correspondence. 10A, Municipality of Yarmouth Fire Service negotiation. We have a letter replied back. CAO, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, that's just for information. There was a letter that was sent to the municipality, to the warden, asking for his help in getting the process restarted. And I know council was very interested in that. And so when we received this response, I felt it was worthy to put on the agenda so that you were for sure aware that we got this response quite promptly, and looking forward to moving forward with the negotiations.
Perfect. Thank you. Additions. 11A, Tourism Week. Councillor Cleveland.
All right. Tourism Week is coming up. It's the end of May. It's the end of May every year. I checked the date and I wrote it down somewhere here, but it's the last week of May, 29th through June 4th. All right. We already had a little talk about my big speeching these days lately has been about tourism as an industry and the impact that it has on this particular region. And this is more for information's sake than anything else. But I'm going to be in the next while, and Mike Carter, communications officer, I'll give you a little advance warning. I think we need a local campaign to, and I think it's one of those things that has to be done over and over again, because it's the oddest thing. We have an amazing area here. YASTA, the Yarmouth and Acadian Shores Tourist Association, does an amazing job marketing tourism. But their job, of course, is to market tourism to those markets. So it's New England, it's the rest of Canada, it's the rest of Nova Scotia. But here within our region itself, I find that people kind of poo-poo tourism as an industry at all. And it drives me kind of insane. Whenever you hear things about, for example, and I'm just going to throw this out here, but we all hear it all the time, Bay Ferries and the cat coming back, and how excited we are that, you know, we're getting tourism back again this year. And mostly what you get on social media is what a waste of money, what a waste of time. And so what I'd like to do for that week is a campaign kind of to bring attention to tourism as an industry here in the area. I'll work on that again with Mike and perhaps with Natalie within the next little while. I would like to, it seems kind of ironic because we had this conversation before, I'd like to try to organize a cleanup for that week as well, because Tourism Week is that week. Just a week or so later, we're going to be hosting 96, I believe, media people with TMAC coming here. It might be, I might be exaggerating. It might be less than that. But it is a huge amount of people who are coming to look through our area with one of a huge conference for tourism media. So we need to put our best foot forward. And we really need to have everyone kind of on the same page moving forward, aware of what this means to the area monetarily and otherwise. That's me. I'm done.
Perfect. Mayor Mood?
Yeah, thanks for that, Wade. It's funny because, you know, the boat disappears and look what happens to the town. But social media doesn't understand the importance of tourism. So, you know, again, somebody said it today, you know, it's our job to make the tough decisions. And as, you know, the presenter said today, social media is not the place to go if you want the real answers. Without me getting in trouble, here I go again.
Informed opinions?
Informed opinions, exactly. Thank you. So just so you know, the whole all hands on deck thing, I just had to wait this month because if I did it and, you know, when it's cold, so probably over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start doing that too. So we're probably cross paths because it's going to be the same call out. You know, what are you as an individual, a community, you know, an organization, a business going to do to ready us for the ferry and for tourism season? And that includes cleanup. That includes, you know, conversations that Heather and I have kind of very briefly, but, you know, what is it she needs me to put out there with regard to, you know, the planting and the whole red flowers and whatever else it is. So all those pieces together, I'll be out there doing that over the next 2 or 3 weeks, just so we'll be ready. So you'll have a head start by the time Tourism Week comes. Just so you know that that's going on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Thank you, Councillor Cleveland, for that one. And you're up for parking on Chestnut.
It is all my fault that we're staying this long, and I apologize for that.
Not mine. Sure.
Sorry. I've had a few people reach out to me about Chestnut Street. And of course, one of the things that we touched upon today is a big kind of rebuild that's scheduled for the Vancouver Main Street intersection there. But where the dental office is, there is a real problem when it comes to parking. And I've just in the last little while had that brought up again. And I know we've discussed this before, but really nothing has come of it. And I'm not sure what the next step is. Maybe it's asking our already overworked staff to take a look at this. But something really needs to be done in that particular area. So that's all. I'm just bringing that up for some of our constituents who were bothered by it and called me about it.
Okay. I live on Chestnut Street, and I'm going to say this, and I know people won't agree with me, but I live on the street, so it's busy. And you have to slow down if you're coming up the street. You have to slow down if you're going down the street. That is the case with 90% of the streets in Halifax. And when that happens, I know you guys are going to laugh at me maybe, but when that happens, I just think the town is busy. We're growing. People are going to, not that staff can't take a look at that. There's no reason they can't take a look at it, but we have to understand that things are not going to stay the same. There's going to be parking on both sides of the road, at least one side of the road, simply by virtue of the fact that those businesses on that corner are very, very busy. And I'll probably be the only one that thinks this, but it's just a part of growth. We can't fix everything, and we have to learn to accept that with growth comes a little bit of, you just have to maybe weave your way a little bit, slow down, take your time because you're coming down Chestnut. But that's just that's just me. I think we can't fix everything for everybody.
Councillor Dares?
Thank you. I know we've discussed this before, and I'll just repeat what I've said before. I use that route several times a day. I come down Vancouver Street, up Chestnut, and typically there's times that I have to wait 5 or 6 seconds for a vehicle that's coming in the other direction to go by before I can drive up the street. And I'll tell you that I consider it a very first world problem. I don't consider the 5 or 6 seconds that I have to wait a real issue. I live in a town where if you have to wait for a second light, you're wondering where the accident is. And quite honestly, there's no easy fix to that problem. That was a problem that was created when they built the building and designed the parking. And I don't know what we can do to fix it, but it's not something that I lose a lot of sleep over. And as I say, I travel that route a lot. I mean, several times a day. Typically, I'm up and down that street. So. I just don't think we should waste a lot of effort on it because I don't think there's an easy fix. And if I ever see that there's an easy fix, I'll be the first one to point it out. Thank you.
Councillor Lesser?
Just curious about how parking on the side of the street works. I know that from the middle of the street over so many feet, I don't know if it's 12 or whatever the number is, belongs to the town. But I know there are, because I've heard from some people that live along there as well. And I actually don't live on that street, but I come out from where I live onto the street. I think, to me, the issue is the turn to get out and off and on the street. And there's a huge tree right on the corner property of Summer and Chestnut that I think is actually a worse problem than the parking. The tree really blocks, and I don't think we can tell the tree not to be there. But we have a few people there that some of the vehicles park on people's property that I assume is their property, but they're making quite a mess of it. And I think that's part of the issue as well for those residents. But I don't know the answer of how much land is owned by the town and how much, are you allowed to park on both sides of the streets and those type of things. So I never have the answers when people contact me about it. But I know that there's definitely an issue kind of on that corner where people are parking on what appears to be, looks like lawn.
Thank you. I know you brought that up a few times before, Councillor Lesser, and I believe there were some signs put in there and previously and whatnot, at least some attempt to fix that up as much as he could. But as we said, first world problems. And go ahead, Councillor Dares.
Yeah, just to clarify, I agree with Councillor Lesser that the private property owners that are being negatively impacted, if we can address that, we should. I guess what I was talking about was the people that drive down the street. I don't think that those are traveling in that up and down the street are put out enough that it should cause them any grief. But yeah, certainly the neighbors, if there's people parking on their property or blocking their driveways or whatever, or causing damage, I think if we can address that, we should.
Thank you.
I agree too. That's a different topic from what we originally started with.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, I'm trying to think on going up the street. On the right-hand side, there's a sidewalk and there's a curb. On the left-hand side I mean, if there's any damage being done, it would be on that side. Wouldn't you think, Gil?
Yes.
It
Because
is on the corner of Summer and Chestnut on the opposite side that people are parking along there, and then even into Summer Street. It appears to be that, I don't know if it's the property owner or the person living there, but it certainly appears to be parking on their lawn a lot.
Okay. So did they make a complaint?
Yes.
So maybe a no parking on that side of the road sign. I don't know. I'm not the parking authority.
Sorry to interrupt, but the reason that the people who called me were residents in the lower part of Chester. That's what this is about.
Yeah, I see that. I can see that that whole corner right there, because people always do park right on their property, which is not fair. That's a no parking sign.
So just one thing else on that is that I know what people's answer often is to put cinder blocks out, and that keeps people away for the most part. But I know cinder blocks don't look great either, and I think if it is possible to put a sign up, I don't know who owns that spot to park in, I guess, and cinder blocks are probably not the answer, but I think the CAO might know more about what parking can happen and can't happen.
Yeah. So actually, CAO doesn't know much more, but we should refer this to Chad, and Chad can have a look at the situation, and he'll be able to figure out where the street ends and try and figure out where the problems are, and maybe come up with some solutions. And it might be as simple as a sign, but let's refer it to Chad.
Councillor Bell.
Just an observation that in many parts of town, residential parts of town, where there is no sidewalk, property owners take care of the property right to the road, and they come to think of it as their property. But in fact, if you look at the right-of-way, much of the property that they're taking good care of is actually not their property. So I don't know for sure about the area that you're speaking, but it's possible that that it in fact is still public property that the cars are parking on, possibly, but just because there's no sidewalk, it looks as though the property line comes right to the road. So anyway, I'm sure that staff will be able to look at it and come up with some suggestions.
Should we make a motion for that?
Yes.
Someone like to make that motion? Councillor Dares, seconded by Councillor Bell. So the motion would be for Chad and the traffic authority to look into some solutions there around the corner of Summer and Chestnut Street for those who are unsure. Any more discussion on that one? Hearing none, all in favor do so by raising your hand. All those opposed, motion carried. And I believe that's it. Anything in camera?
Yes, we do have one item in camera.
And I have a motion to go in camera, please. Motion by Mayor Mood, seconded by Councillor Bell. All in favor do so by raising your hand. Contrary minded,